Hello, good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 14th of November. These are your headlines. The Chancellor ditches what would have been a manifesto-busting rising income tax, a major policy U-turn just a fortnight before the budget. Elsewhere, the BBC makes its apology to President Trump but says they won't be giving him compensation. Will that be enough? Trump's lawsuit deadline is today. Sky News exposes the cross-channel people smuggling gangs taking migrants from London to Calais.
You can see that boat is completely overloaded and there's still other people running out.
Mission to Mars, launched by the man from Amazon. Jeff Bezos' rocket company blasts into space. And at 6:40, we'll be seeing what's making headlines in today's papers for you with Politico's Bethany Dawson. Hello, good morning. It's really good to be with you this morning. And we will begin with a major U-turn from the Chancellor with just 2 weeks to go until the budget. Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have scrapped plans to break their manifesto pledge and raise income tax. That's despite weeks of hints from the government that a hike might be needed to plug a huge black hole in the finances. Well, let's cross live to our Westminster and to speak to our political correspondent, Amanda Acas. Amanda, what are we learning about this potential U-turn? Morning.
Morning. Yes, well, I think this is a sign, if any more signs were needed, of the absolute chaos behind the scenes at Number 10, frankly, after a week in which we've seen all of this briefing and counter-briefing from Number 10. Now this news that there's been really quite a seismic U-turn in the Chancellor's plans, less than 2 weeks now out from the budget. For weeks now, journalists have been briefed about the fact that she was planning to breach the manifesto and put up income tax in order to fill this £30 billion or so black hole in the budget. Just last week, there was this extraordinary early morning press conference held by the Chancellor, which really seemed designed to try and pave the way to this decision, to kind of give the public a heads up about what was to come, and telling reporters there at that briefing that everyone had to pay their part. She repeatedly refused to deny questions that asked whether she was planning to put up income tax, and she talked about how she was going to act in the national interest, even if it was going to be politically damaging. That's the case she's been repeatedly making. Even on Monday, she talked about the fact that sticking to manifesto pledges would lead to deep cuts to public spending, which would be very damaging to the economy. So this has clearly been something that the Prime Minister and Chancellor had been preparing to do for a very long time. But clearly now, given the extent of the political crisis that they're currently suffering, the kind of fears of such a big backlash from their own backbench MPs, they've decided that they're going to have to ditch those plans completely. It's unclear as to what exactly will replace them. There's a suggestion in the Financial Times, which first reported this U-turn, that they will instead be freezing or even lowering income tax thresholds for the next few years, which could raise, they think, around £8 billion. But it basically means by ditching the plans to make this one big tax increase, they're going to have to instead look across the board at lots of different taxes to try and raise the money, which risks antagonising lots of different groups of people. Now, the detail of this plan was that they were planning on putting up income tax by 2p, but at the same time cutting national insurance by 2p. So the idea of that was that people who earn £50,000 or less would effectively be protected, but this would be an additional hit on higher earners, but also landlords and pensioners as well. But it was such a fundamental promise at the last election that they wouldn't put up income tax, VAT or national insurance. There were big warnings from many in the party. Lucy Powell, the newly elected deputy of the party, saying it would add to a kind of breach of trust in politics. And now we've seen over the past few days this warning from Number 10 being briefed to journalists about the Prime Minister facing a possible plot after the budget, and people briefing about Wes Treating, which backfired so spectacularly with him denying those claims and accusing Number 10 of a toxic culture behind the scenes. I think this just adds to the sense that the Prime Minister is too weak to get through his own agenda. We saw attempts to reform welfare earlier this year again being torpedoed below the waterline, as it were, because of anger from backbench MPs. And now, once again, on such a core part of the budget, just a couple of weeks out, it looks like he's had to backtrack once again. Now, of course, nothing had been confirmed. The budget isn't set in stone until it's delivered by the Chancellor at the dispatch box, but this does certainly does not make the Prime Minister look like he's in a strong position.
OK, for now, Amanda, thank you. Now, the BBC has apologised to President Trump for the way his January 6th speech was edited in a Panorama documentary. So Chairman Samir Shah has written to the White House, calling it an error of judgment, and said the programme would not be broadcast again. But it disagreed that the president had been defamed. Here's the full statement from the BBC. Lawyers for the BBC have written to President Trump's legal team in response to a letter received on Sunday. BBC Chair Samir Shah has separately sent a personal letter to the White House making clear to President Trump that he and the corporation are sorry for the edit of the president's speech. He goes on to say, on the 6th of January 2021, which featured in the programme, the BBC has no plans to rebroadcast the documentary Trump: A Second Chance on any BBC platforms. While the BBC sincerely regrets the manner in which the video clip was edited, we strongly disagree there's a basis for defamation claim. Well, our correspondent Emma Birchley has more for you.
Well, two statements came from the BBC within a matter of minutes, and in fact, a whole day before the deadline to respond that had been set by President Trump. Now, in the first of those statements, it was a very clear apology about the fact there had been what was described as an error of judgment when the BBC had edited Donald Trump's speech from January the 6th, 2021, to basically change its meaning, giving the impression that the president wanted supporters to march with him on the Capitol building and fight like hell. Also, what was made clear is that the programme would never be shown again. Then the second statement came through. Now, that statement said that the BBC chair, Samir Shah, had sent a personal letter to the White House, himself actually apologising. But then what that statement also did was leave no doubt that as far as the corporation is concerned, we strongly disagree there is a basis for a defamation claim. Now, this all relates to the fact that Donald Trump had said that he wanted £1 billion. He would be suing the BBC for £1 billion because of the way that they had misrepresented him. But now another problem has emerged, and this relates to the same speech, which has been edited in a very similar way, but in this case in another flagship BBC programme, and that is Newsnight, a programme that went out in June of 2022. Now, the problem there was that, according to a story in the Telegraph, a live guest, after that speech had been shown, said, "Well, I'm not an apologist for the president. However, you have changed the meaning of that." And yet, according to the Telegraph, no apology was made or reference to that on that programme. And in addition, it's reported that the next morning in an editorial meeting, concerns were raised, but nothing was done about it. Now, the BBC has responded. It says that it holds itself to the highest editorial standards. It says the matter has been brought to our attention and that we are now looking into it. But for the BBC, there's no doubt the problems keep on coming.
Emma Birchley reporting there. But listen, will an apology from the BBC be enough for Donald Trump? Well, our US correspondent David Blevins has the latest for you from Washington.
Donald Trump had demanded an apology, a retraction and compensation, claiming defamation. Well, he's got an apology. The programme has been taken off all BBC platforms, and given that the BBC is publicly funded, you might conclude that 2 out of 3 ain't bad. He does have a reputation, of course, for threatening to sue media organisations and not following it through with an actual lawsuit. when Paramount paid him $16 million over how CBS News had edited an interview of his political rival Kamala Harris, and when Disney paid him $15 million over how ABC News had reported a case against him, those were legal settlements, not courtroom victories. And there's no guarantee he would win. He's threatening to take this case in a personal capacity in Florida, so he would have to prove that enough people there viewed the BBC content for it to have caused him financial and reputational harm. And it is notoriously difficult to prove malicious intent when you are dealing with a public figure. And Donald Trump is most certainly that.
David Blevins there. Now, the Home Secretary will announce plans next week aimed at making the UK less attractive for illegal immigrants. It's understood that Shabana Mahmood is looking at Denmark's system as a model for these changes, with rules there considered some of the toughest in Europe. Our Home editor, Jason Farrell, has been tracking down cross-channel smuggling gangs, exposing their networks and the industry that enables them to operate across northern France.
This is the last bus stop to Britain, the final leg of a long journey.
Police are here just observing what's going on. But, I mean, look at the life. It's quite clear what's going on. Would you like to go to England?
Yes.
Yes.
Where's everybody going? You've got some life jackets.
We filmed them buying life jackets in a local sports shop, Decathlon, and there's plentiful supply. We've been tipped off about the workings here from a contact on the migrant camp Tedicum near Dunkirk. That was passed on to us by Ali, a people smuggler based in London.
How much does it cost these days?
Now for a boat,
Yeah,
from France to here,
yeah.
2,000 or 3,000 pounds each.
We're not identifying Ali. He often lived among the migrant camps in France, referred to as the jungle, helping others get across.
All the time hiding in the jungle are the workers, but the boss, nobody will find him. He's somebody in Germany, Holland, Belgium. The middle people, they get everyone ready.
Hidden amongst this group are the middlemen Ali talked about. Take note of this man in the cap. We'll see him again.
It's pretty obvious that people here have one thing in mind, which is to get to the coast, to get on the boat.
People smuggler Ali says each nationality has its own fixer, but they often pool the boats. This group are all young people, but as night falls, edging closer to the coast, we see families, and again, the man in the cap shepherding. Then, in the early hours, they dash to the water. And what's to stop them? The beam of a headlight, a police jeep circling like an ineffective sheepdog.
The police have chased them as far as the shoreline. Once they're in the sea, the police stop. And they are now just on the edge of the waves there, waiting for a boat to come and pick them up.
As dawn breaks, their boat, which has been partially loaded up the coast, now unloads. It was deflating.
Oh, there's a problem with that. Oh, it's puncture.
Yeah, but
This tiny pump can't have been much use.
It's clearly got a lot of give in this.
This aborted trip will delay the release of money to the smugglers. Ali told us some UK restaurants or money exchanges sometimes hold the cash. There were successful launches.
You can see that boat is completely overloaded and there's still other people running out.
But many missed out, including this young family from Sudan.
Do you worry about how dangerous this is?
Sudan is more dangerous.
Sudan's more dangerous than the Channel.
Hundreds have died doing this. Hundreds of thousands have made it. They will take those odds. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
And we will get more on that with Jason in the next hour. He'll be joined by Anna and Kamali on Mornings. Now, resident doctors go on strike this morning, as they start 5 days of strike action. We'll be covering all of this. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has branded the fresh walkouts as reckless and irresponsible. Now, the union representing doctors, the British Medical Association, is demanding a 26% pay rise. The government has confirmed they'll ban landlords from evicting their tenants without reason from the start of May. It's part of a huge reform to the Renters' Rights Act, and the measures mean landlords won't be allowed to increase rent more than once a year, and they'll be prevented from allowing bidding wars between prospective tenants. The timeline set out by ministers today aims to give landlords and letting agents time to implement the changes, which will impact 11 million renters across the country. Torrential rain has triggered a landslide in Indonesia, killing at least 2 people. 21 others are missing after several days of heavy rainfall, and it led to the disaster on the island of Java. Authorities say unstable ground conditions have hampered early rescue efforts. We'll keep an eye on that story, of course. Well, let's take a look through some of the front pages this morning. What we're going to do is start with the Guardian, and they're focusing on the BBC apology to President Trump. It's after Panorama's wrongful edit of the president's speech before the January 6 Capitol riots. Meanwhile, The Telegraph, it's leading on that story, a slightly different take on it. And what they're reporting is that there is a second clip, apparently, being doctored by another BBC programme before the Panorama, so that keeps on running on that story. The Express, should we take a look at that? Because there's a damning report into the failings leading up to the murder of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif by her father and stepmother. We'll be discussing that at 6:40 in the paper review. The Times now, that's leading on a poll that says most junior doctors, that they don't actually agree with the latest strike. We're just talking about that. It starts today. And then The Mirror, they're focusing on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's alleged involvement in the activities of paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And it's again leading that, of course, Andrew has always denied any allegations of wrongdoing. And the Metro, 84 in, 133 out. That's the latest figures on the government's new migration deal with France, with the Home Secretary hailing this story as a milestone. So those are your papers. But as I said, at 6:40, we'll have our news review. And this morning, I'm pleased to say, we're joined by Bethany Dawson, London Playbook diary reporter at Politico. So do stay with us. Now, there's warnings of major flooding across parts of England and Wales, with Storm Claudia expected to hit around lunchtime. The Met Office have issued an amber weather warning from midday across the Midlands and some of South Wales too. Rainfall exceeding 100 millimetres is forecast. A yellow warning covers most of the 2 nations, and forecaster Aidan McGiven has more on what to expect in the worst affected areas.
The biggest amount of rainfall that we're likely to see is between Cardiff and Newport northwards through the Welsh valleys up into Monmouthshire. There's a risk in this area of more than 100 millimetres of rain from Thursday night through to Saturday morning. And then there's another area we are concerned about, so across the Midlands into the east of England, central southern England, where there's the risk of 60 to 80 millimetres of rain in places. All these areas at risk of flooding, river flooding and surface water flooding.
Now, we already knew, didn't we, that Elon Musk could do it, and now his rival in the world's richest man stakes, Jeff Bezos, has joined the Space Launch Club.
Lift up, detected. Confirmation.
Yeah, the Amazon founders Blue Origin company launched its New Glenn rocket, carrying 2 NASA space probes to Mars. They'll circle the red planet for several months, studying its atmosphere and weather conditions.
Getting back to touchdown.
Minutes after takeoff, the rocket and its main fuel tanks, well, they separated and the reusable booster returned to Earth and landed successfully aboard a platform in the Atlantic Ocean. Well, coming up, we will have more on the assisted dying bill that will be debated in the House of Commons today.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Baqir, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started.
And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here.
My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagir, Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello, welcome back. Now, a woman with a brain tumour that's left her with just 2 weeks to live says she's frustrated she doesn't have the option of an assisted death. The assisted dying bill is being debated today as it begins its committee stage in the House of Lords. So Edwina Rumney was diagnosed with an aggressive tumour and wishes she had more control over the situation of her death. Sky's Greg Milam reports.
I've enjoyed a very independent, active life. I've been very fortunate with lots of choices through my life.
4 weeks before we spoke to Ed, she'd been driving her camper van and volunteering. Then came the diagnosis of an aggressive, inoperable brain tumour and just weeks to live.
I'd say my life as I've known it is very definitely over. It's definitely gone. Looking to my life for however long it is now, which I'm told isn't likely to be very long, it's not my life. It's not. I'm not going to be in control of it. This malignant growth in my brain is going to choose for me. I'm mainly concerned with me losing my identity of me. I have always tried to live my life with self-respect and dignity, and I don't know whether I'm going to have self-respect for me and dignity for me.
For that reason, she supports the assisted dying bill making its way through Parliament. It'll come too late for her, but perhaps not for others.
I feel I should have a choice. I feel that it should be me who says, well, I think I'll get off this bus now. You know, I've reached where I want to go to, and I'm quite happy. I've had a good life.
There are opponents to this law who'll say that there are people who are vulnerable, who maybe won't have that choice, that other people will make that choice for them. When you hear the opposition to the law, what do you say?
I feel that I don't want other people to restrict my choice. And I'm perfectly capable of deciding for me. And I've always tried to stand up and help people who haven't had the same choice as I've had. And I accept that there are vulnerable people. The people who are looking after them are the ones that will have to be honest and make the choices, as they already will do for vulnerable people.
She says people shouldn't have to travel abroad, away from home and their families, to find a legal death.
I think it should be made easier for the people and the families to all be able to deal with it. That's my wish for other people in the future, that it would be an organised, dignified way where people could talk over with their families what is the best thing. I mean, you know, dying shouldn't be a horrific thing. I think most of us aren't afraid of death. We're afraid of what we have to go through before death. I think that's a majority of people feel like that. And so what you're saying here is, we're not going to let you have a peaceful death. We're going to make you go through something before you get there. And that's not fair.
She talked a lot about her childhood, her life with her husband Jack and her family. In the days after we met, she planned her own funeral and ticked off one item on her bucket list, to dance again at a kitchen disco. The next celebration she knows will be the one of her life after she's gone.
I'm very, very realistic. It's no good, you know, weeping and wailing about it. It's here. Some people have hard times all their lives. I've had a wonderful life, and if this is my hard time in my life, I've just got to face it and accept it. Yeah, I think you should be able to make a decision and say, right, you know, let's make a plan, and we're going to have a kitchen disco next Friday, and, you know, we should be doing that, and then, you know, say goodbye, and that'll be fine. It would.
Greg Milam, Sky News.
Greg's report there, it's on the Sky News website. Really important reporting. Now, pop star Ariana Grande has been ambushed by a fan at the Wicked for Good premiere, forcing her co-star to intervene. It was one of the stories discussed, actually, in our Cheat Sheet podcast, which covers all of the day's news.
Ariana Grande has previously spoken about her struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety following the bombing at her Manchester Arena concert back in May 2017, which left 22 people dead, of course. And we did see her co-star, Cynthia Erivo, come to her rescue. She leant over Ariana and separated the man from her, and she's getting a lot of praise for that.
She is.
Online.
I mean, security could have jumped in as well. This man is a prankster, TikTok prankster, apparently. He's got a history of doing this sort of thing. He got on stage in Singapore in June as well at Katy Perry gig, as well at a concert for the weekend in Australia. He also got onto the track for the 100-metre finals in the 2024 Paris Olympics and the 2023 Cricket World Cup finals. But as you point out, Ariana Grande has suffered an immense tragedy while out in public, so this sort of thing will not help her PTSD that she'll be suffering from that situation in any way, shape or form.
And stop whatever you're doing. Scan the QR code. It's on the screen, so you can listen to today's Cheat Sheet podcast in full. It's well worth it. But still to come here on Sky News, a major U-turn from the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. They're ditching plans, apparently, to raise income tax in the upcoming budget.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Darna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear-gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello, welcome back. This is Mornings on Sky News, and I've got your headlines. So Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have ditched plans to raise income tax in next month's budget. That's despite weeks, really, of hints from the Chancellor that a hike might be needed to plug a huge black hole in public finances. Elsewhere, the BBC has apologised to Donald Trump for the way his January 6th speech was edited in a Panorama documentary. The corporations called it an error of judgment, though it rejects Mr Trump's threat of legal action and says there's no basis for a defamation claim. And with the Home Secretary set to announce plans next week aimed at tackling illegal immigration, Sky News has tracked down and exposed the cross-channel smuggling gangs getting migrants from London to Calais.
You can see that boat is completely overloaded and there's still other people running out.
It's called a fresh walkout by resident doctors, reckless and irresponsible. They'll gather on picket lines this morning as 5 days of industrial action. It's all over pay gets underway.
Lift off, effective.
Confirmation.
And Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin has launched its huge new Glenn rocket with 2 aircraft on board destined for Mars. Crowds gathered to celebrate the mission in which 2 probes were sent into orbit. Now, should we get more on that top story then? The major U-turn from the Chancellor with just 2 weeks to go until the budget. So Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have scrapped plans to break their manifesto pledge and raise income tax. Let's cross to Westminster and speak to our political correspondent, Amanda Acas. Amanda, as people are waking up, what do they need to know about this latest move?
Well, it's a rather extraordinary U-turn and what was expected to be the key measure to be announced in the budget coming up in just under 2 weeks' time. Yes, of course, nothing had been formally announced yet ahead of the budget, but Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, and indeed other members of the government have really spent weeks now seemingly paving the ground ahead of plans to increase income tax in order to fill what is expected to be a £30 billion black hole in the public finances. Now, clearly, this has always been incredibly controversial because it's a breach of one of Labour's core manifesto promises not to put up income tax, VAT or national insurance. But just last week, Rachel Reeves gave a rather extraordinary early morning press conference, which really seemed to be kind of laying the groundwork for the rationale behind this in arguing that the economic situation, A, that she'd inherited, but B, that had developed post-Brexit and with the Trump tariffs and the ongoing war in Ukraine had been so much worse than anticipated, that she was going to have to act in the national interest as opposed to taking political expediency into account, and everyone was going to have to play their part. Now, this was widely interpreted as her signalling that people were going to have to pay more income tax. She's been repeatedly asked about it and recently has been repeatedly failing to deny that's what she was planning to do. And indeed, in an interview just on Monday, she talked about the fact that if she stuck to her manifesto pledges, that would mean having to make some deep cuts and a return to austerity, which is something that she didn't want to do. Now, the specifics of the plan that were widely briefed to journalists were that the Chancellor was planning to put up income tax by 2p, but at the same time cut national insurance by 2p, which would effectively mean that people on £50,000 a year or less wouldn't be affected by this increase because it would be offset in that way. But this would hit higher earners as well as pensioners as well as landlords. Now, there's clearly been a furious and very worried backlash from many Labour MPs. And fundamentally, what we've learned this week is that the Prime Minister is in an incredibly weak position. Frankly, it seems very chaotic behind the scenes in Downing Street after we had this kind of briefing war, which backfired rather spectacularly earlier this week, in which sources in Number 10 were telling journalists, including Sky's Beth Rigby, that the Prime Minister was prepared to fight off any coup attempt, a plot after the budget to remove him from MPs, and other sources even naming Wes Streeting as a potential leader at such a plot. He then furiously denied those claims and accused Number 10 of presiding over a toxic culture, and clearly has left the Prime Minister in a much weaker position. But now this news, which clearly follows that sense of anger, that sense of instability within the party, particularly after those failed attempts at welfare reform we saw earlier in the year, has left the Prime Minister and the Chancellor looking exceedingly damaged.
OK, Amanda, thank you. Now, the BBC has apologised to President Trump for the way his January 6th speech was edited in a Panorama documentary. So Chairman Samir Shah has written to the White House, calling it an error of judgment, and said the programme would not be broadcast again. But it disagreed that the president had been defamed. Now, the edit made it appear as if Mr. Trump had explicitly urged his supporters to attack the US Capitol. Let's take you through that full statement then from the BBC. Lawyers for the BBC have written to President Trump's legal team in response to a letter received on Sunday. BBC Chair Samir Shah has separately sent a personal letter to the White House making clear to President Trump that he and the corporation are sorry for the edit of the president's speech on January the 6th, 2021, which featured in the programme. The BBC has no plans to rebroadcast the documentary Trump, A Second Chance, on any BBC platforms. And while the BBC sincerely regrets the manner in which the video clip was edited, we strongly disagree there's a basis for defamation. OK, we're going to get your latest sport now. We're going to go live to Jackie. Very good morning to you, Jackie. Always great to see you. So we're going to talk about that press conference from the boxing press conference, rather, in a moment. But first, you know, England are really proving to be in control in their World Cup qualifiers, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if you watched it last night. Absolutely filthy weather at Wembley, really disgusting conditions, but they won 2-0 against Serbia. It wasn't quite as sort of impressive as it was the last time they played Serbia, but, you know, England have already qualified. And Thomas Tuchel kind of has this really lovely conundrum. You know, who does he pick as his number 10 player? Now, he seems to be very, very attached to Morgan Rogers, the Aston Villa player, but he now has the option to bring Jude Bellingham off the bench, which he did after 65 minutes last night. Those two are childhood friends. That is now going to be a rivalry for that position. And also Phil Foden, does he get to go? He came off the bench last night and was very lively as well. So, you know, the auditions continue. They've got Albania next in Albania in a few days' time. And it will be interesting come the World Cup, you know, what 11 he's going to pick, because he has so much strength and depth to choose from. 2-0 last night, no goals conceded in qualifying so far, and England looking very, very good indeed, considering the conditions and the fact they've already qualified.
Jackie, we have to talk about that Eubank Ben press conference, because Eddie Hearn, he pulled a Love Actually moment, didn't he, in that press conference?
Well, yes, and this is a 35-year-old family feud between the Bens and the Eubanks, because the fathers obviously had two fights 35 years ago, going back, and now the two sons have changed their weights. One's come up in weight, that's Conor Benn, one's come down in weight, that's Chris Eubank Jr., to fight each other. They fought in April. Eubank, the larger man, won. But interestingly, at all their press conferences, Chris Eubank Jr. does not let Eddie Hearn, who is Conor Benn's promoter, speak. He always talks over him. So yesterday at the final press conference, last night, he was really prepared, was Eddie Hearn. So instead of talking, he had Love Actually cue cards prepared. He had the Silent Night music, which kind of beat Chris Eubank to it. You know, he could talk over him all he wanted. He had all the key cards. He could have got them a bit more organised, though, couldn't he? Come on, Eddie. Just to say, I think the next one's going to say, I think Conor Benn is perfect. Oh, Conor Benn is perfect will be the next thing he says.
And we always tell the truth.
Oh, come on. Yes.
And to me, Conor Benn is perfect.
Yeah, didn't have to speak at all, which must have really killed him because Eddie Hearn really does like to talk. Anyway, it's the usual face-off between the two boxers, which is always a bit of pantomime. But the two dads were there. Chris Eubank, Senior, there was questions whether he would actually attend the last fight. He was so critical of it. But then he did in the end. The two fighters faced off, and then there was a bit of an awkward hug moment because Nigel Benn, who back in the day was so very scary to interview, let me tell you, just a very scary man, is now a bit of a pussycat and fairly lovely and cuddly. So there's the family lineup. So it's a fight that, you know, some people are critical of, but the fact is it's raised a lot of money for both fighters, raised a lot of money generally, and we've been talking to them, and we're going to hear from them in the 7 o'clock hour, and also that full interview tomorrow as well. But for now, let's have a quick look at some of those goals from last night.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
The club made a great pitch to me, that they wanted me. They gave me a 4-year contract. All the stops were out. They made me feel really welcome.
We arrived at the airport there in Madrid, and there were 50 journalists, cameras, and we thought, oh, they come for this movie star, you know. Suddenly we see, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's for you.
It's always difficult losing a great player. Jimmy, for me, was always a world-class striker. Probably not talked about as much, I don't think, as to some of the other great strikers, but I was fortunate enough to play with him.
We obviously made a very good profit on him. If you just take the business transaction, not the football emotion, the transaction was a good deal because we bought him for 2 and we sold him for £12 million.
In 2 years, got 6 times their money. I was not a big earner at the time at the club. So for them, it was a big gain.
He's settling into his new surrounds, the player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road. But stories of excessive demands were fictional, according to Atletico's new signing.
I was supposed to stay there. I was supposed to sign a new contract and feel happy. If they can ask 12 million for a player, the rest is all clear.
Where you asking?
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, coming up, we'll be discussing the stories making headlines in today's papers with our panellists, Politico's Bethany Dawson. Morning.
Good morning.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here.
My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, it's time to see what's making headlines in today's papers in our news review. I'm really pleased to say we're joined this morning by Bethany Dawson, London Playbook Diary reporter at Politico. Morning, Bethany.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Always, always. Shall we start with, and what we'll do is we'll group these papers together because it's all about migration, isn't it? It's the I and it's the Metro. Shabana Mahmood is coming out with some changes to migration a bit later today, but then the Metro is really leaning in, isn't it, on the numbers. Their big headline is 84 in, 113 out. What's your take on this?
So I think what we're going to see when the Home Secretary announces these big changes to migration, I think what we can expect her to say is when you look at these numbers, this is what the government has achieved so far, and then imagine what they can achieve with even bigger changes. I think that's probably the kind of spin we're going to hear. So these numbers look at I think the 1 in, 1 out deal that was announced a couple of months ago with France. And by the numbers, it looks as though there is some progression. We're seeing more people leave. We're seeing a bit of an equilibrium in that. Now, critics are going to say, you know, these numbers are great, but there are still a lot of people are arriving by small boats. So this doesn't touch the sides. But again, when you kind of think about what the Home Secretary might say, she will say it is a jolly good start. And then she will say, you know, but wait, there's more. And she's going to announce this sort of Denmark-style migration shake-up. And what we expect that to look like is a change to people no longer getting sort of permanent status in the UK. So it will be a lot harder for people to settle for their life in the UK. And they're also going to make the UK a less attractive place to come to. So they're going to make it harder to reunite with family and things like that. So this is going to be an interesting one. And I think the government, well, they're really going to hope to hit the right notes on that, because this is, as we know, an incredibly big issue that a lot of people are going to be voting on in the next election.
Yeah, people watching would have seen Jason Farrell's reporting there from the beaches in Calais. And what people will be saying at home will be saying, actually, what they want is to see real-time changes immediately. And anything like this, any kind of dismantling of the gangs, could potentially take years to come. And that's where the problem will be.
Yeah, and when you look into these plans, one of the big things they want to do is reform the way that the ECHR is interpreted. So those human rights laws from the European Court that many people have used to stay in the UK to challenge deportation orders. the government are saying they're going to reform them. They're going to put kind of the, British people first. However, as you say, these are things that take a really long time. These are complicated. The reason the government haven't snapped their fingers and changed this isn't because of a lack of will. It's because it is complicated. So, the Home Secretary will get up. She will make these big changes. And while some people will be glad to hear that, as you say, the real measure of success is in those changes, and they need changes that are bigger than these numbers on the front of the Metro, even if the government is really happy to see them.
Yeah, I think lots of people will agree with that, Bethany. Can we take people watching to, it's page 2 of the Financial Times, because a week is a long time in politics these days, and at the start of the week we had Wedge Streeting on Mornings with Wilf and Sophy talking about he has no interest in becoming Prime Minister. And as the dust settles, maybe it won't settle, it's interesting to reflect on how this has looked for the Health Secretary. So what he's managed to do, I would argue, is he's managed to sort of turn around a government bout, government infighting, and he has come across as someone in control, particularly in control of the narrative, cool and calm. And it's not necessarily about a policy win, but this, Bethany, if we look back on the past week, is definitely a political win for the Health Secretary, with strikes on the horizon, with battles that he will have with unions over that 26% potential pay rise to resident doctors. This week has been a political win, no doubt, for Wedge Streeting.
Yeah, it's not often on a week when there are NHS strikes that you say it's been a good week for the Health Secretary. But actually, as you say, with something that is incredibly difficult to go on the morning round and say, I'm aware that there are rumours that I want to be the Prime Minister. That's silly. You have to be an incredibly good political operator to dismiss that and come out on top. But actually, Wedge Streeting has. I was talking to a Labour aide on the day that this was all sort of swirling around, and they were saying, it's a really bad move to try and trip Wedge Streeting up on the morning round. I'm sure there's ways to do it, right? Everyone has a sensitive spot, but Wedge Streeting just is very agile. He's a very good communicator, and frankly, that's something that some of his other front bench colleagues don't have that skill set. So yeah, he has come out looking kind of like a grown-up, which is something that a lot of Labour politicians are probably quite jealous of.
Yeah, I think that's really important at a time when questions are swirling around discipline, particularly around number 10, where Streeting has come out as one of the winners in a week that was really quite damning for the Prime Minister, and Morgan McSweeney too. Let's move on now, Bethany, to the front pages of The Telegraph and The Guardian. And the reason being is because the BBC have issued an apology to the US President over that editing of the clip of the President, that January the 6th riot speech for Panorama. So that's what's happened. That's the latest from the BBC. But The Telegraph, what they're reporting, isn't it, that there's a second programme that may have also done this before the Panorama programme was broadcast, which isn't anymore on any BBC platforms. But this means the row around the BBC's authority, editorial guidance, comes under scrutiny again. It's on the front page of this paper, Daily Telegraph.
Yes, so the BBC, The Telegraph reported that there was this Newsnight clip, very similar to the Panorama clip that's come under fire, similar sort of splicing that misrepresents what the President said on January 6th. Now, they reported this, then a couple of hours later, the BBC issued that apology for the Panorama clip. Now, there's a question as to whether there's a question generally whether the President would accept an apology from the BBC. They did say, we're very sorry for what we did, however, we will not be paying you compensation. No. And they said very firmly they do not think there is any basis for a defamation claim. Now, Donald Trump is not someone I would describe as sort of being a water off a duck's back kind of guy. And I think that comes even more into focus when there is then this second clip, this second issue that has come up. And I think it doesn't seem as though there has been a statement from President Trump's counsel yet. However, I think this is just going to draw this out, right? This is not, again, Donald Trump is someone that's quite difficult to kind of have the best way of saying this, to navigate one of these situations with, right? He will put a statement out on Truth Social. He will be quite dynamic. And then when you have these stories that whip this all up into a frenzy again, I think this is, just going to make this even harder for the BBC to navigate out of. And it was already very difficult.
Yeah. I wanted to move on now. This is a story in the Times, Bethany. Wanted to get your take on this because they're reporting, they've got the numbers in the amount of time that Sir Keir Starmer has spent abroad since his premiership and that landslide victory. And apparently he spent a sixth of his premiership abroad, which I think it's really important to state that it's quite unusual, isn't it, for a Prime Minister, sitting Prime Minister, to spend that amount of time away, considering the domestic issues that the country's facing. Some of their numbers, are talking about, 80 days away compared to 15 days of Boris Johnson, 67 of Rishi Sunak and 67 for David Cameron. So it's about how does he address his domestic audience? Is it easier to be abroad and be seen as a world stage? And there are arguments, aren't there, actually? What he's doing is he's setting the basis for trade deals, for putting the UK on the global stage. But many critics are saying, actually, what we need is a Prime Minister at home dealing with the big issues.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the government, actually, what we were talking about earlier, the metro front of the deal with France that has seen this one-in, one-out deal, they will point to that, I'm sure, and say, well, actually, this is what the Prime Minister is achieving by being more present on the world stage, working with allies abroad. However, as you say, we look at other front pages and there's doctor strikes, there's issue in the social care systems, and there are so many domestic issues that we've seen reporting this week that the Prime Minister is being advised to actually focus a little bit more on at home and be an at-home Prime Minister, start working on those domestic issues a bit more.
Yeah, really interesting that. More to come throughout the day. Bethany, thank you. That's all from us. Anna and Kamali.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 7 a.m. and this is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how things are looking.
The Chancellor ditches what would have been a manifesto-busting rise in income tax, a major policy U-turn just a fortnight before the budget.
Our home editor, Jason Farrell, exposes the cross-channel people smuggling gangs taking migrants across the waterway.
The BBC makes its apology to President Trump, but say they won't be giving him compensation. So will that be enough? Trump's lawsuit deadline is today.
A new inquiry into egg and embryo donation and freezing has been launched. We'll get the thoughts of the British Fertility Society.
Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn roll back the years as they face off ahead of their son's rematch fight tomorrow night.
Hello, good morning, and thank you for being with us. So Keir Starmer and the Chancellor Rachel Reeves have scrapped plans to break their manifesto pledge and raise income tax rates. We understand that Downing Street has backed down after seeing the anger coming from Labour MPs as well as voters.
Well, yes, it's a backtrack on what would have been a huge consequential policy change, and it's happening just 12 days before the Chancellor is due to deliver the budget. So let's find out a little bit more. Our political correspondent Amanda Acas is here. Morning to you, Amanda. I mean, this is quite a surprise, isn't it? There's been so much pitch rolling, so much preparation for a potential rise in income tax, but it looks like that's off the cards then.
Yes, I mean, I'd go as far as saying sort of a bombshell story, frankly, because as you say, we've had weeks and weeks and weeks of the Chancellor and other ministers really trying to kind of prepare the groundwork for this so that the public weren't completely shocked by the fact that they're preparing to breach their manifesto pledge not to put up income tax, VAT or national insurance. But again and again, we've heard ministers refusing to deny that suggestion that they were planning to do that after having previously insisted they would stick to their manifesto pledges. Then we had the extraordinary press conference last week from Rachel Reeves early in the morning, which really seemed designed to kind of lay out the argument of why this was such a necessity.
Everyone's got to play their part.
Exactly. And saying, you know, she had to act in the national interest, not because of political expediency, because the country's finances is in such a bad way. And so many journalists have been briefed that the plan had been to put up income tax by 2p, but at the same time to cut national insurance by 2p, which would have effectively meant that people earning less than £50,000 were kind of shielded from this, but higher earners, pensioners, landlords would all face a big hit because she's got a big hole in the finances to fill, some £30 billion. And if she doesn't do this, well, she's going to have to look across the board at a lot of smaller tax increases, which are likely to be unpopular with different groups of people. There's a suggestion in the Financial Times, which first reported this, that she's going to look at potentially even reducing the thresholds at which people pay the different rates of income tax, or at least freezing them for a kind of further period. But why is she doing it? And this is kind of the most interesting thing, really. Because it just shows the huge... The state of chaos, really, that there is behind the scenes at Number 10, or after a week in which we've seen this kind of briefing that the PM would be prepared to fight back any kind of plots that could come at him after the budget, clearly because of the unpopularity of putting up income tax and breaching the manifesto in such a kind of fundamental way. And then the kind of backlash against suggestions that Wes Streeting might be kind of behind that plot, which has just really left the Prime Minister really quite damaged and unable to kind of get his agenda over the line. We saw what happened with the welfare bill, and now it seems to be happening again with plans to the budget too.
Yeah, extraordinary. Amanda, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, good morning to you.
It really is a kind of surprise to read this morning, isn't it? Because there really did seem to be all that preparation in place. Also suggestions that behind the scenes, the Prime Minister and Rachel Reeves were holding meetings, talking to people in the tea rooms, trying to get people on side, their own MPs on side. But they're probably really bruised as well by that defeat over welfare reforms, isn't it? And worried it could happen again.
They're definitely bruised by that. But I also wonder, as Amanda mentioned, how much the briefing this week and the fallout from this plot that wasn't a plot to us, Sir Keir Starmer, has affected them as well. And it just smells of weakness. That's the whole thing. If they're willing to back down on something that they say they have to do, as you point out, Rachel Reeves in her speech said that we all have to play our part. The suggestion being that they were going to raise income tax, or at least raise one of those taxes and break a manifesto pledge. If they're unable to do that because of fear of their own MPs as well as the voters. It says that they're not strong enough to push things through. It's just another example of the difficulties this government is facing at this point. And of course, we're going to put some of these questions to the government a little later on. I'm going to speak to Lisa Nanda, the Culture Secretary, who, as well as talking about the budget, which she won't tell me anything about, we're also going to ask her about the BBC as well.
It's always worth a try, though.
I'll try, but I know what she's going to say.
Let's move on, because next this morning we're talking about the migration crisis, and the Home Secretary is expected to announce plans next week aimed at making the UK less attractive for illegal immigrants. It's understood that Shabana Mahmood is looking at Denmark's system as a model for these changes, with rules there considered to be some of the toughest in Europe.
Now, our Home editor, Jason Farrell, has been tracking down smuggling gangs and exposing their networks in an industry that's enabling them to operate across Northern Europe. Here's a look at some of his report.
In Dunkirk, we've been tipped off. A group is on the move. Their intended destination is obvious, marked by the fluorescent life vests slung over shoulders or packed in bin liners.
Police are here just observing what's going on. But, I mean, look at the life. It's quite clear what's going on.
This is the final leg of their land route, the last bus stop to Britain.
Where's everybody going? You don't know? You don't know where you're going? I see you've got some life jackets. OK. Are you trying to get to England?
It seems many of the life vests are purchased here in Dunkirk's sports superstore, Decathlon. €30 each. We witnessed migrants trying them on for size and a steady flow of new stock arriving in store. Hardly surprising considering the demand. Decathlon says it's in regular contact with authorities. Our journey began in London with people smuggler Ali.
How much does it cost these days?
Now for a boat,
from
France to here, £2,000 or £3,000 each. All the time hiding in the jungle are the workers, but the boss, nobody will find him. He's somebody in Germany, Holland, Belgium. The middle people, they get everyone ready.
Boarding the bus to no one knows where, police stop 2 individuals, but the rest continue. Hidden among the group are the middlemen Ali talked about. Take note of this man in the cap. We will see him again.
Look, I'm very pleased to say that Jason has joined us. Morning to you, Jason.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing report. It's just, every time you get to see inside these operations, it's just fascinating, because this is still going on despite all these calls to smash the gang, stop the boats.
Yeah.
And you've seen how they're operating.
Yeah, we left you on a cliffhanger there, didn't we? We'll see this man again. They are the middlemen, and I think that was one of the things we learned about these people who are kind of operating in the camps, like in the jungle camps, in the camps on northern France, this one in Dunkirk. They're acting almost like tour reps. They're saying, listen, this is where you go, this is when you go. They're getting their directions from the bosses and often controlling mobile phones and things like that. And as I say, living in the camps. And then we learned also about the bosses, where they're based. They're based all across Europe, at Turkey, other places. We were particularly looking at a Kurdish network that was operating. And the payments as well. So often payments made in the UK, actually, and are held in trust and then aren't released until after the boats get there. And we saw one boat, for example, that didn't get there. It actually started to deflate. And looking at how these massive boats are being inflated by these tiny pumps, and if they get into trouble, they really, there's nothing these guys can do, and they did have to come back in. And then finally, I think also what we reveal is just the blatancy of it, how people are buying their life jackets in the local shop, they're getting on the bus in front of the police can see what's going on. And we were only there for 3 days, and in that 3-week period, only 3 boats actually left on a 120-mile stretch from Dunkirk to Dieppe. Now, we filmed 2 of them, and actually we knew where the 3rd was going from as well. And I make the point at the end of the piece, with a bit of local intelligence, you can actually know where these boats are going to go from. And I felt like there has been a lot of work with the National Crime Agency, a lot of gangs have been cracked, I think 52 gang networks have been cracked down on. But just the simple things like getting hold of the boats, stopping people, having a bit more resources when you know people are going, I felt like there was more you could do. And you can really see the kind of cat and mouse game on the beach, which is a bit of a pantomime, really. There are a few police officers and, literally 100 migrants getting out onto the beach. There's nothing they can do.
Extraordinary reporting. The full film will be played out later and was on our website as well for now, right? Excellent stuff, Jason.
Jason, thank you.
We appreciate it. All right.
Now, the BBC has apologised to President Trump over the misleading edit of his January the 6th speech in an edition of Panorama, but it won't be fulfilling his other demand for compensation.
Yeah, the BBC chair, Samir Shah, has written to Trump directly, calling it an error of judgment, and said the programme wouldn't be broadcast again, but has disagreed that the president had been defamed. All right, let's bring in our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, on this morning to you, Katie. So, look, the BBC have lost their boss, lost their head of news. They've now issued this apology. So that's something about this money. So what's coming next?
Look, it has been a bruising week, to say the least, for the BBC. All eyes had been on how they were going to respond to this looming deadline that President Trump had set. Arguably failing to act swiftly and decisively in the last week is what has got them into this mess of double resignations. So they had to respond to this and get ahead of that deadline, I think. Let's just take a look at what the BBC has put out, what their actual response is. So in their statement, they put out, lawyers for the BBC have written to President Trump's legal team in response to a letter received on Sunday. BBC Chair Samir Shah has separately sent a personal letter to the White House making clear to President Trump that he and the corporation are sorry for the edit of the president's speech. On the 6th of January 2021, which featured in the programme, the BBC has no plans to rebroadcast the documentary. While the BBC sincerely regrets the manner in which the video clip was edited, we strongly disagree there is a basis for a defamation claim. In a way, this is a means of everyone being able to walk away if President Trump is agreeable with this.
Like the look to camera, just to make sure he's listening.
with everyone able to save face in a way. Donald Trump gets 2 out of the 3 things that he wanted for. It won't be broadcast again, and he gets an apology, which I think few people would question that he is entitled to an apology for the misleading way that this was edited. Equally, though, we are at such a pivotal time. The BBC is under such bombardment from all quarters that it needed to come out and really defend its journalism in a robust way. And I think that is them standing up for the journalism. Legal experts throughout the week have been arguing that it's questionable whether or not Trump actually even has grounds to raise this as a defamation case because of where it's filed. It's not clear whether or not this actually even aired in Florida, and because he did say to his supporters to fight like hell. So look, this is the BBC coming out strong. We're yet to see what President Trump's response is, though.
No, we are all waiting, looking at his Truth Social. I guess that's where we're going to find out first. Keep refreshing that feed.
Yeah.
I mean, he said he's got an obligation to sue. That was his statement.
Yeah, he talked to Fox News about that, didn't he?
Absolutely.
And said he had to do it.
And as everyone says, he's a very litigious man. He's had 2 heads. He's now had the apology, the direct apology. It's whether or not that is going to be enough for President Trump and whether he'll accept that.
And guess what his lawyers say as well? The BBC obviously feel confident that they have a strong case, don't they?
Also muddying the water. You've got the Telegraph saying that this happened again on an episode of Newsnight. So that equally is not a good look for the BBC.
Absolutely. Let's not good look. Wait and see what Trump says.
Thanks, Katie.
Now, resident doctors are gathering on the picket lines this morning as they start 5 days of strike action.
Yeah, the Health Secretary at Wes Streeting has branded the walkouts as reckless and irresponsible. The union representing the doctors, the British Medical Association, are demanding a 26% pay rise. Well, our correspondent Molly Malone is in central London outside St Thomas's for us this morning. Morning to you, Molly. So, look, they're out on strike again. I think this is the 13th time, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, since March 2023. This is the start of 5 days of action by resident doctors who used to be called junior doctors, and they represent around half of doctors in England in the NHS. And this time, the BMA, which is the union representing many junior doctors, say that it's about pay restoration, essentially making the argument that once you account for inflation, well, pay levels, they say, aren't the same as what they were many decades ago. But look, the government, from their perspective, people will remember that when they came into office last summer, it was one of the first things that they dealt with, really, and the position of the government right now is that they're not budging. They say that junior doctors have had a pay rise of almost 30% over 3 years. It's more, they say, than other public sector workers, so they're not prepared to move. So once again, as we've seen for the last couple of years now, they're at this sort of stalemate, if you like. But the BMA, in response, say that even once you account for that 30% pay rise, you're still not at what they say are 2008 levels. Look, they recognise that it will cause disruption, and that was the case in July when another strike took place. We saw tens of thousands of procedures and appointments postponed, cancelled, and it cost the NHS somewhere around £300 million. And the estimates are that the 5 days of action over the next few days will cost a similar amount. The NHS do say, though, they're looking to keep on going with things. They're looking that they'll continue even kind of non-urgent care, around 95% of things like hip operations, knee operations. And the advice really is to keep coming to A&E, to keep your standard kind of GP appointments. But there's no doubt that I think the next 5 days or so will continue to cause disruption.
OK. Molly, for now, outside St Thomas's, thank you for that. Now, something completely different. Speed cameras.
Yeah.
Money savers or life savers? Money makers, sorry, or life savers, the other way around. We'll be talking about that after an unusual move by an official in Canada. Now, I want to show you this bit of video from the yellow carpet, that's what they call it, for the premiere of the new Wicked film. Ariana Grande got some unwelcome attention from an individual who decided to invade the yellow carpet. I'm watching it now. And there it is. Dude jumps out of the crowd, puts his arm around Ariana Grande, has to be protected by her co-star, Cynthia Erivo. And thankfully, that individual was then taken away and spoken to by authorities. He's the person who's got form for kind of invading public events like this, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think he has also jumped on stage for various concerts. I think Katy Perry, for example, The Weeknd, two examples of concerts where he's also made his presence felt. You could say shares those videos on Instagram as well. I think it's not clear whether any charges have been brought.
No, but you could see the reaction from Ariana Grande. So let's remember who this person is. She's a star, she's a fantastic singer, a fantastic actor, but also she's suffering from the trauma of being at a concert that was bombed and 22 people were killed. You can see her reaction as that individual puts his arm around her. She's terrified.
It would be very scary, wouldn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
So I think she's OK. She was looked after by her co-star, and I wish her all the best and hope that individual gets a speaking to. All right, well, let's speak now about the situation facing the government. As Amanda was telling us just a little while ago, a bit of a marmalade dropper this morning when we found out that they were going to U-turn on a plan that wasn't even written down yet about an increase in income tax. I'm pleased to say we can speak to the Culture Secretary now, Lisa Nandy, about some of this. Secretary of State, thanks very much for being with us and good morning to you. I'm going to start with the budget. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but is it right that the government have now U-turned on this plan of increasing income tax?
Well, we haven't confirmed that. We haven't confirmed anything in the budget so far because, as you know, and I'm sorry to say again, but this is a matter for the Chancellor and all of those decisions will be laid out by her to the House of Commons in just a few weeks' time. We've made a series of spending decisions this week, including investing into clean energy in Wales. We've announcing today an expansion of the entry points to creative careers for young people from working class and backgrounds and from out of London. But I can't speculate about what's in the budget. It wouldn't be helpful or right.
Absolutely, and as expected, that's the answer, and I think it's the right answer to give because the budget is coming. The question will be, though, it seems as if you're being bullied by your MPs and others. This government said it's going to make decisions in the national interest. We had the Chancellor just a little while ago saying that we all have to play our part in all of this. And now this reporting that one of the main levers, one of the ways of filling that fiscal black hole of some 30 billion that you say is there, is not going to be taken. It doesn't seem as if you quite know what you're doing.
I've known the Chancellor well for 15 years now, and I can tell you that she is solely and fiercely focused on the challenges facing the country and doing what is in the best interests of the country. She's never been shy of facing people down in order to do that in opposition and in government. And over the course of the last few weeks, obviously, I've had some discussions with her and her team about measures in the budget that may affect my department, proposals that we're making, and discussions that ordinarily happen across government. And in every one of those discussions, it's been the public interest that she's completely focused on.
Look, the thing is, as you say, you've had these discussions, we've had these trial balloons, however you want to describe it, for the past few weeks, if not month or so, about what may or may not be in the budget. Isn't the fact of the matter now that when the budget is finally presented, any changes you make, you may not get the political credit for, because many of the public feel as if they've been deceived all the way along this, led up certain garden paths and then brought back from it. You're not going to get any credit for any changes you make because of the sort of slightly disingenuous way that you've presented some of this before it's even happened.
Well, the only test in the end that will really matter is whether people feel better off. We've had the biggest fall in living standards since Victorian times under the last government, and a lot of that has been to do with the fact that we've had an economy that has had low or no growth for over a decade. So focusing on getting the economy growing and pulling every lever at our disposal to help people with the pain that they've experienced over the last decade, whether it's getting NHS waiting lists down, we just had 16,000 more people removed from those lists over the last month, or whether it's measures like extending free breakfast clubs and free school meals to children in schools. We're doing everything that we can to make life easier for people in the short term, but fix the foundations for the long term. I can't remember a time when the government has simultaneously tried to do both of those things in recent memory, but the Chancellor is determined to do both. And I think you can see from some of the things that we've been able to do this week that actually by making those tough choices, we've been able to get waiting lists down, we've been able to improve the quality of our public services, and we've been able to start investing in parts of the country that haven't seen investment for a very long time.
I mean, one of the other things you've been able to do this week is have some infighting at the very, very top. Suggestions that the Prime Minister was about to be ousted in a coup by his mate and colleague Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. All of that speculation was ongoing as well, wasn't it? So you'll acknowledge it's not been a great week for the party.
I think I'm as frustrated as anyone, perhaps more, about the briefings and that have taken place, because every Tuesday I go to Cabinet, I sit around that Cabinet table with a group of like-minded people, many like me, who had a long time in opposition to have a ringside seat that the damage the Tories were doing to our country.
Well, you're repeating some of it, aren't you? Wouldn't you say, with some of it? Some of the briefing, the background briefing, the backstabbing?
I'm really frustrated about it, and I look at a group of people every Tuesday morning who are solely and relentlessly focused on getting on with the job, including the Health Secretary and all of us. And so I think you can feel the levels of frustration coming from senior members of the Cabinet, but I can tell you that the Prime Minister is one of those people who is completely focused on the country, is pulling together the team, and we will continue to focus on the country despite that. My message to those people who go out and brief and try and distract from the work of this government is you're not acting in the interests of the Prime Minister, you're not acting in the interests of the country, and it needs to stop.
I won't get you to comment on speculation that Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff, is going to be ousted from his job or maybe saved and kept in his job, but just, we hear his name all the time. People out there don't know what he's like, who he is. What is he like? Nice guy?
Yes, he is. We obviously, as a government, we don't comment on individual staff members because it would be unfair. People who work for the Prime Minister, whichever Prime Minister of whichever government, don't have the right to reply. But I can tell you that, having worked with the Prime Minister's senior team as well as Cabinet Ministers for a long time now, not just in government but in opposition, we have always been relentlessly focused on what is happening out there in the country. In the end, the judge of any government is the public, and our reason for being in politics collectively is to make life better for people. So we'll continue to focus on that. We'll continue to ignore any briefings or distractions, and we'll continue to deliver the sorts of things that I'm announcing today. Huge expansion of young people from whatever their background being able to work in our amazing creative industries.
I want to talk to you about an amazing creative industry, some would say the BBC. We've seen that they've apologised. They've written a letter directly to Donald Trump. Still outstanding is this question as to whether or not they will pay any damages. We're going to find out from the man himself whether or not he's going to pursue that. On principle of it, if he continues with that course of action, if he continues to be litigious and to try and sue the BBC for damages, how would you feel as Culture Secretary about the BBC paying damages to Donald Trump?
Well, look, I've been speaking daily, frequently, to the chairman of the board, the director general and senior members of the BBC, and they have consulted lawyers and are absolutely confident that they are protected against defamation. That doesn't mean to say for a moment that they don't accept that there was a serious mistake here, and that's the basis on which they have apologised to the President of the United States, as well as to the House of Commons and to the public for the mistakes that were made. The most important thing now going forwards is that they get the right processes in place, they have the right mix of editorial experience at the very top of the organisation, and that we put them on a firm footing for the future through the Charter Review. I'm determined to support them with that. Of course, they're independent of government, but they are one of the most important institutions in this country, the light on the hill for people here at home and overseas, and we are determined to make sure that they can go on to thrive in the future.
You've spoken to them, you've spoken to the US side of this?
Well, obviously the BBC is independent, so we haven't been involved in discussions directly between the White House and the BBC. That is a question for them and for their lawyers. Obviously, we talk to the Americans about a number of issues all the time, but this is a question for the BBC, given their independence, and their independence is something we take very seriously. They've been attacked for what they have said. They've been attacked for what they haven't said by people on left and right, as I made clear to members of the House of Commons this week. And it's important that the BBC is able to hold the spotlight up to all of us without fear or favour. We take their independence very seriously, and of course, so this is of course a matter for them to talk to the American administration about, but it's for the role of government to make sure that we support them to get a grip on this at the highest levels and to make sure that they have the highest standards going forwards.
OK, Secretary of State, we run out of time, but really good to speak with you as always. Thanks very much for being with us, Lisa and Andy. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you. Run out of time, unfortunately. More questions to ask her, but interesting to hear what she has to say about the BBC and its position here, saying that the government essentially will support them in whatever decision they choose to make going forward.
Absolutely. We're going to hear a lot more about that, and as we await Donald Trump's response. Stay with us, lots coming up.
Do stay with us. there, and welcome back to Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. Let's go through our top stories. Well, Keir Starmer and the Chancellor Rachel Reeves ditched their plans to raise income tax in the upcoming budget. That is despite weeks of hints from the government that an increase will be needed to plug the hole in the public finances.
With the Home Secretary set to announce plans next week aimed at tackling illegal immigration, Sky News has tracked down and exposed the cross-channel smuggling gangs getting migrants from London to Calais.
You can see that boat is completely overloaded and there's still other people running out.
The BBC has apologised to President Trump for the way his speech from January the 6th was edited in a panorama. The corporation called it an error of judgment, but it rejects Mr Trump's threat of legal action, saying there's no basis for a defamation claim.
Now, IVF is becoming a more and more popular choice when it comes to starting a family, but are donors being given enough information?
The Women's and Equalities Committee has launched a new inquiry to make sure the current safeguarding policies are up to scratch. Well, let's speak to Sarah Norcross, Director of the Progress Educational Trust and Trustee of the British Fertility Society. Good morning to you, Sarah. Thanks so much for being with us. So what needs to change in how the safety around this issue is brought in?
I'm not sure that anything needs to change, and that's what I'd really like to reassure people who are watching this morning. When you hear an inquiry has been launched into looking at something, you think there's perhaps a big problem with safety, and there really isn't here. We're very fortunate in the UK that we have a dedicated regulator, the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority, overseeing this area, and we also have a law that governs it. So the patients really are very well protected.
That's really interesting because the committee is saying that it's going to explore, amongst other things, the health impacts of donating or freezing eggs and embryos, and to what extent they are sufficiently researched. But you feel confident that we have the research and people are properly informed of the potential health risks, if you like, that could be associated?
Yes, doctors have a duty to inform you about any risks when you undergo a medical procedure, and that is no different in fertility treatment. Also, what we're talking about here in terms of whether it's egg freezing or egg donation is the same part of the process that people go through for IVF. So I'm wondering why, if we're concerned about the health, we're not including IVF in there as well. And, you know, there are sort of more than 10 million, perhaps up to 13 million babies being born through IVF globally. So if there were a big health and safety concern with that for women who are having to take the hormone injections in order to stimulate the reproductive system to produce the eggs for collection, then we'd know about it by now. And in relation to egg donation itself, the first egg donation baby was born almost half a century ago. This isn't something that is new technology. This is something that's been going for almost 50 years. The Progress Educational Trust did an event marking the 40th birthday of that baby. And, you know, no one there was talking about any issues to do with safety and health of the donor.
Yeah, so it's certainly been a long time in completing families for many people who struggle to have a baby without these kind of interventions. Have you noticed, what's the sort of level of people freezing their eggs at the moment? Has there been an increase recently?
So there is an increase in people freezing their eggs. And this is because of, probably mostly likely because of a law change that our charity led, which enables women to store their eggs for longer. There used to be a limit of 10 years, but now that has gone. So the latest figures from the regulator are that showing an increase. So it went from 4,700 in 2022 to 6,900 in 2023. That's the most recent figures they have because of the way the data is collected. So we're seeing a rise, but it's not, you know, growing massively.
Okay, Sarah Norcross, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, resident doctors are on strike today. NHS bosses are warning that frontline medics could lose their jobs if strikes by resident doctors continue, as they cost the NHS too much. Well, we can speak to one of those bosses. Professor Meghana Pandit is the NHS's co-national medical director. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us. So resident doctors, formerly known, of course, as junior doctors, begin this latest 5-day walkout today. What impact do you think that walkout could have on patients?
Thank you. Good morning. So any strike really is hugely devastating and frustrating. Patient care will be affected, but we will try our level best to maintain planned activity. And it is also not good for staff who cover those who are striking. So we will continue to maintain and provide safest levels of care to all our patients. And my advice is that if people and patients have an appointment today or over the 5 days, please attend as normal, unless you receive a letter or instruction to not attend. If there's a life-threatening emergency, please dial 999. And if there is non-life-threatening or urgent requirements, please dial 111 or see your GP or pharmacist. All the other staff in the NHS are working, and services will continue to provide safest care.
Dr. Pandit, morning to you. That's your advice to patients. What's your advice to some of your junior colleagues who are out again now for the 13th time since May of 2023, and also threatening to be out again every month in 2026?
As I've said, strikes are not good for the NHS, particularly at this point when we are facing a peak of flu. They have received 29% pay rise over the last 2 to 3 years. And this is about non-pay as well as pay. And we're working very hard with them to address their working lives and improve their non-pay conditions. I know that they had an offer from Secretary of State in terms of improving their working life conditions, but also getting some money back into their pockets by offering to pay their professional fees and exam fees. However, that offer was rejected. I am working with resident doctors on a program called the 10-Point Plan, which looks to address their working conditions. It includes reforms for annual leave. It includes study leave reimbursements, avoidance of pay errors, and a whole range of other factors. And I really urge them to work with us to do those. I know there's a silent majority of resident doctors who did not vote in favour of strikes. So I think we need to really work together to address this and do what is best for our patients.
No doubt changing working conditions will be welcomed by these resident doctors, but they're making the point that even though they got that big pay deal with the government last year, their pay is still way behind levels that they saw back in 2008. Do you have some sympathy for them here?
Look, we are all working together in the interests of patient care. Ultimately, the pay is negotiated with the government. They have had a pay rise, the highest in the public sector, and I think we need to really focus on what we are required to do here, and we will improve their working conditions, and they need to look at the offer that they received from Secretary of State.
Really good to have you on the programme this morning. Professor Meghana Pandit, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
Morning to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the doctors have got themselves out on strike again. The government hardening, as we heard there from the professor. She says that strikes are not good for the NHS. We're coming into winter again, of course, and those regular annual pressures will be there.
Absolutely. We're sticking to his guns that he's not going to pay out again. And, of course, we've got that tough budget coming up, of course. So it's a tricky time for doctors to be pushing for more money, isn't it? So we'll see what happens.
We will. All right.
Go on.
Jackie is going to be with us very soon around this very table, looking ahead to the weekend sport, including that rematch that's coming up between Chris Eubank Jr. and one Connor Ben. Looking forward to that. Stay with us.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. the freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna.
We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing. We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water, and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello there and welcome back. One for motorists, especially if you're in Canada, that the province of Ontario is going to turn off all their speed cameras from today.
I know, it's all part of the province's plan to cut out what they call tax grabs and instead invest more than £110 million to replace cameras with speed bumps, raised pedestrian crossings and roundabouts. So we thought we'd chat about whether it was a good idea or not. Here in the UK, there are over 7,000 speed cameras catching millions of Brits every year. Some of the most notorious locations include
the A38 Sutton in Ashfield, which averages 72 fines a day. That's between junction 7 and 16 on the M25, which averages around 60, and the A17 in Reigate that captures around 50 motorists per day. They're top of the list, but I'm sure near you there are some speed cameras that you're very, very wary of.
Everyone will have their own stories.
I know, there's one near me that I'm watching out for.
Let's bring in the solicitor Nick Freeman now, known as Mr. Loophole, of course. Very good morning to you, Nick Freeman. Thanks for talking to us. No suggestion that Ontario's plan is going to be introduced here, so we shouldn't get people's
Don't get too
hopes.
excited.
Some people might get their hopes up, but do you think it's a good idea, though?
I think cameras have a place. In Ontario, it's astonishing because they have 700 cameras there, and they're going to pay. They've obviously paid a lot of money to put them in, and they're going to have to pay a lot of money to dismantle them. And their view is, let's try and prevent people from speeding rather than issuing tickets. They've conceded that they're basically fiscally inspired. And the motorist has known that, and they're basically saying we're not going to have war at the motorists. This is all about road safety, and this is what, if you remember, when cameras were initially introduced, it was all about accident black spots. So to answer your question, I think cameras do have a place. Round schools, you stick them at one end of the street and the other, so there's no slowing down for it. You just have to go through that dangerous spot in a sensible manner. But I think just to have them to trap motorists to raise the money, which this government obviously is desperate to do at the moment, more so now than ever, they're never going to be unravelled here. I think it's very unfair, and it is basically a tax by stealth on the motorist. What they're planning on doing...
Sorry, go on.
What they're planning on doing in Ontario is actually having traffic calming measures. So, for example, raised curves, speed bumps, and even false red traffic lights. So all that stuff is going to cost a lot of money, and it actually isn't good for the environment because it damages vehicles and it causes people to brake and accelerate. So there are issues there. So I think that we should have cameras, but in limited circumstances, and I think we just need more police on the road so that people aren't obsessed with how fast they're going, because that's only one aspect of driving. And what we need to concentrate on as drivers is driving safely, being aware of what is about around you. When you're traveling in cities at 20 miles an hour, you're literally fixated now, aren't you, with how fast you're going. You don't want that ticket. You don't want that endorsement. Sensible, reasonable people are being criminalised, and it's unfair and it's wrong, particularly as cyclists can undertake and overtake. So I'd like to see cameras in certain locations, and I'd like to see a lot more police on the street prosecuting people for bad driving, such as lane hogging and all the other stuff that goes on that basically is now untouched. And we're now a nation of much worse drivers because of the outbreak, if you like, of speed cameras everywhere.
As predicted, you have plenty to say on that, Nick. I mean, is there any evidence that these speed cameras are a tax grab by the government? I'm sure local councils... Well, let me finish my question first. I'm sure local councils would say they've put them in places where they find that motorists are speeding, and that's why they need to be there. It's not about raising revenue. It's about making sure people cut down their speed. And in other countries, I know that they use sort of cardboard cutouts of police cars. I've seen that. It's always caused me to put my foot on the brake and slow down a bit. Could we bring in measures like that here, do you think?
Yeah, I think they're a good idea. You occasionally do see cardboard cutouts of police officers, but I think they're mainly installed by villages. I think any sort of traffic calming measures, it's all about road safety. But I think if a government was honest, or if a council was honest, and you look at the figures, they would concede, look, we've got cameras at the bottom of a hill, we might have them hidden. We might have a mobile unit, for example, hidden behind a bush, so we know motorists are going to accelerate slightly. That isn't about road safety. That's about nicking the motorists' money because they're easy prey. And we need to go back to the initial reason why we had cameras, and that is just to make our roads safer. So we want more. You cannot replace the police presence on the roads, because that has an effect on motorists. When you see a police car, you look at your speed, you check your driving. Police officer has a discretion. A camera doesn't have a discretion. So when a police officer pulls you over and says, look, you're driving okay, but just watch your speed, you drive very carefully for the rest of the journey. Most people now have apps on their phone. They know where the cameras are, and what they do is they slow down for them, and then when they've gone past the camera, they accelerate. Well, that's not good for the environment, and it's not good driving, and it's amazing how many people still get caught. But the cameras do raise millions and millions and millions of pounds every year, because people are going marginally too quickly. And I know from what I do that I have people coming to my office, if you like, middle-aged people who have never had an endorsement in their life, who are now looking at, they've got 9 points on the licence, they've got another one, because it's just impossible in cities to drive at 20 miles an hour. And they're feeling very upset by it.
It's not impossible, is it? I mean, you can drive at 20 miles an hour. I drove at 20 miles an hour to get in this morning. You can do it.
Of course you can do it. When I say impossible, I'm using that expression loosely. If you come off, I drive down to London regularly, and I come off the M1 and go on the Finchley Road, and I'm constantly having to put my foot on the brake without touching my accelerator because there's a slight decline to make sure that my car doesn't go 23 miles an hour.
It is annoying. I'll give you that. It is annoying to have to drive at 20. Some of these new cars do have a limiter, which I always have on my vehicle to stop me going over 20, but then I find it's in and I'm like, oh, bloody hell.
Except you wouldn't normally swear.
Never would.
Sorry about that. Nick Freeman, we are out of time.
OK, I just wanted to say, when you're going at 20, you have to make a huge effort to do so, don't you? And you're ignoring all the other aspects that we need to focus on, and that's my point.
Yeah, you've raised some really interesting issues, Nick Freeman, this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Something that we're going to be discussing a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. I could chat about it for ages. Jackie's here. I mean, what do you think, Jackie?
20 miles an hour?
Speed cameras, I mean, if they're in the right places and they prevent accidents, that's going to be the greatest disincentive,
quite annoying, all of it. There's a bit of the A3 where they've got a speed camera every few metres.
Right.
And I just think, what's the point of that?
You
just had one.
How many times have they caught you on those
Never caught me, but I mean...
To stop you speeding up again after a camera.
But then there's another one. And then there's another one. I always think, wow, I wonder
Controlling
how
your
much
speed,
they
Jackie.
cost to put up.
Yeah. And how much
I'm
they're
not
making.
speeding, but it just seems a bit over the top.
I knew it would get us started, this subject. Let's move on to sport, though, and we can always come back to speed cameras later.
Well, I tell you who it is really quite hard for, is Conor Benn.
Brilliant segue, love it.
Nice link to your
OK, so Conor Benn fights Chris Eubank Jr. Again this weekend at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They fought before in April. Chris Eubank, the bigger man, won. They're fighting at this catch weight, and they're fighting because, their dads had these really famous fights and this family feud going back 35 years. But Chris Eubank Jr. has to boil down to get to the weight of 160 pounds, and he gets fined if he doesn't make the weight. And last time, he didn't make the weight by 0.05 pounds. So he had to pay a fine, which is £500,000. It went to Conor Benn. Conor Benn bought a Rolls Royce with that money.
Excellent.
Which I reckon would be quite hard to go at 20 miles an hour in. I don't know. I've never driven one. But anyway, so as we're speaking, Chris Eubank Jr. is suffering probably quite a lot as he tries to get the weight down. And he doesn't do it gradually over his training camp. He does it yesterday and today and tonight. Have a listen.
Thank you for reminding me about the 500,000 I had to pay for being 0.05 ounces over my limit. We will most definitely be making sure that those mistakes are not made again this time around.
Have you had to do it quite carefully, the making weight?
The making weight, the weight cut will be done, 24 to 36 hours before the weigh-in. I've known nothing else since I was 14 years old. I'm 36 now. My entire life has been combat, war, pain, tactics, gym, weight cutting, diet.
And the extraordinary thing is, Jackie, he's going to suffer, and he's going to get rid of all that weight. Get rid of that weight in just a couple of days. That doesn't sound very healthy.
Well, that's what his dad's always worried about, is that you're dehydrating.
You feel a bit woozy.
And then you get a rehydration clause, which is £10. So you get to 160, and then you can go to 170. So they have a couple of weigh-ins. One's in secret. But his dad didn't want him to fight because he said, this dehydration is really dangerous. You're taking blows to the head. And you're not just dehydrating your body, you're dehydrating your brain. And that's why he didn't want him to fight last time. But anyway,
came round in the end. He was there. It was an amazing moment when they were all in
the end. But we've got the fuller interview with them. I've been talking to them this week. Tomorrow we'll hear more. But Conor Benn was quite funny because I was asking him, what is this fight? What is it all about? And he sort of said, well, it is what it is. It's a couple of rich kids, public school boys getting in the ring together and putting it all out there. And pretty much said, no matter where you come from in life, no matter how privileged you are, you can still follow your dream. Have a listen.
For me, I don't live in a world where I've got to prove anything to nobody but myself. For me, it was just me reconfirming what I already knew, which is the two silver spoon Nepo kids fighting their hearts and their lives out, because when you look at me and Chris, people look at us and go, they've had it easy. Oh, Nepo kids, silver spoon, and yet I think it shows you, don't matter what sphere you come from, what your background is, you can do anything you want to do in life, you can achieve anything you want to achieve. All that matters is what's inside you, and that's ambition, that's family pride, that's DNA, that's strength and resilience and courage.
Yeah, family pride.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's what they're fighting for. They had their final press conference last night. Eddie Hearn is never allowed to speak in it because Chris Eubank Jr. always talks over him.
Is he his promoter?
No, he is Conor Benn's promoter.
OK, sorry, it makes more sense.
Anyway, so he was prepared. So he did a full Love Actually. He didn't speak. He just got all his cue cards out Silent Night is playing in the background. I don't know if you can hear it. I can't actually hear it. And he just sort of got all his comments out.
Brilliant.
We always tell you the truth. Conor Benn is absolutely
They know
perfect.
how to entertain, don't they?
Yeah, they know how to entertain. The two dads were there yesterday, also did a face-off, and then they hugged, because there isn't really a feud there anymore.
Not anymore.
But the two guys don't like each other. We should mention as well, England, of course, played Serbia last night.
Football.
Already qualified. They won again, 2-0. But the interesting dynamic is, who does Thomas Tuchel pick as his number 10? He has gone with Morgan Rogers in the last few matches because Jude Bellingham was injured and coming back. Jude Bellingham came on 65 minutes and was really full of spark and passion and give me my shirt back. Eberechi Eze came on as well and scored a goal to make it 2-0. He played really well. So did Phil Foden, who's also fighting for his place. So he's got this sort of audition, really, going on.
Good competition for places, not trying to shoehorn players into a position where you have players playing out of position just to make sure all the best.
He's trying to make what's best for the team. And we should say the Republic of Ireland won last night, keeping alive their hopes of qualifying. All they've got to do is beat Hungary and they're into the playoffs.
Good luck.
Only beat Hungary.
Not an easy place to win. All right, Jackie, thank you so much for that. We'll have more from you the next hour, won't we?
Yeah,
we'll be able to watch those interviews on our website probably now-ish.
I would hope so, yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Sounds about right.
I think so.
I think we'll promise it anyway. Stay with us, we've got lots coming up for you, including that apparent U-turn by the Chancellor and the Prime Minister over income tax. They've been preparing the ground, making us all think that income tax was going to rise. It now looks like they've ditched those plans.
Yeah, Lisa Nandy telling me a little while ago that no decisions have been made yet as to what's coming in the budget on the 26th of November. But of course, all plans remain on the table. Stay with us. More next.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 8 a.m. and this is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how things are looking.
The Chancellor ditches what would have been a manifesto-busting rise in income tax, a major policy U-turn just a fortnight before the budget.
Our home editor Jason Farrell exposes the people smuggling gangs taking migrants across the channel.
The BBC apologises as Donald Trump's deadline approaches, but the Culture Secretary says the corporation is confident it did not defame the US president.
They have consulted lawyers and are absolutely confident that they are protected against defamation.
We're on the picket line as resident doctors start their 5 days of strike action.
No-fault evictions will end in May. The Big Issues founder, Lord Bird, is going to be here to tell us what that will do for the homeless.
Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn roll back the ears as they face off ahead of their son's rematch tomorrow night. Good morning and thanks for being with us. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, are said to have scrapped plans to break their manifesto pledge to raise income tax in the upcoming budget. We understand that Downing Street has backed down after seeing the anger from Labour MPs as well as from voters.
Yes, it's a backtrack on what would have been a hugely consequential policy change, and it's happening just 12 days before the Chancellor is due to deliver the budget. So let's find out what's going on. Amanda is here. Hi there, Amanda. I mean, this does come as a surprise, given all the anticipation, all that ground laying that the government seemed to be doing, implying that income tax was on the rise.
Yes, I think it's a bit of a bombshell decision, frankly, because, as you say, the government, not just the Chancellor, but ministers across the board have been coming on programmes, and after months and months of insisting they're sticking to their manifesto pledges, suddenly stopped denying that they were looking at doing this. And then we had this extraordinary press conference from Rachel Reeves just last week, in which she really seemed to be paving the way to tell the public that this is what she was looking at doing, putting up income tax, because of the economic situation the country was in, with some fairly dire warnings about the consequences of Brexit and Donald Trump's tariffs and the war in Ukraine, effectively setting out that £30 billion hole in the finances that she's got to fill in some way, and saying everyone's got to play their part, and making the point that, yes, it politically might be damaging, but she has to act in the national interest. Then now suddenly, to less than 2 weeks out from the budget, to ditch that, effectively the core policy around which the entire budget had been built, because that was kind of the single biggest tax increase that would in itself do the most to kind of fill that hole.
Yeah, so it begs the question, why?
Yeah. Well, yes, exactly. So we know the problems the government have been in over the past, few months, but specifically over the past week. We've seen these briefings coming out of Number 10 saying the Prime Minister was prepared to fight off any plot against him after the budget, which told everyone the PM is expecting a plot to come. He's so weak that he knows that there is this kind of coup being prepared on the backbenches, and then pointing the finger at Wes Streeting. Of course, that backfired rather spectacularly, because he really fought back, insisted it wasn't true, and hit out at a kind of toxic culture in Downing Street, the Prime Minister having to apologise, insisting none of it had been sanctioned by him, and people would be sacked if they were discovered, although didn't launch an actual leak inquiry. So all of that just shows a kind of sense of chaos behind the scenes in Downing Street, and I think there is a real feeling that MPs were so worried about the possibility that they could breach their kind of central manifesto commitment not to put up income tax, VAT or national insurance, and what that would say to the country. We had Lucy Powell, recently elected, the deputy leader, saying it would be a breach of trust in politics. The alternative explanation is that she did submit her plans to the Office of Budget Responsibility, and they have now come back with their assessment. So it's possible some have been suggesting, well, maybe the impact impact assessment shows that this wasn't going to have the effect that she wanted. Perhaps it could be distortive of the economy in some ways. Perhaps that's a more kind of generous interpretation. But effectively, what it looks like is that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor can't get their policies through their own MPs. We saw what happened with the welfare bill. Now, again, such a central part of the budget, it looks like it's fallen by the wayside. And they're both looking incredibly damaged by this.
So interesting. Amanda, thanks very much indeed. And it does obviously beg the question of how she's going to fill that hole in the public finances instead. It looks like it's going to be a series of smaller measures instead, doesn't it?
And as we put to Lisa Nanda earlier, that sort of piecemeal approach, it doesn't do the voters any favours because they don't feel as if they're getting the truth as we're going along towards this moment where they're finally going to announce what these changes in the tax system will be.
Yeah. Really interesting. It's going to be a budget to watch, that's for sure. Let's move on, though, because next this morning we're talking about the migration crisis, and the Home Secretary is expected to announce plans next week aimed at making the UK less attractive for illegal immigrants. It's understood that Shabana Mahmood is looking at Denmark's system as a model for these changes, with rules there considered some of the toughest in Europe.
Now, our Home Editor Jason Farrell has been tracking down smuggling gangs, exposing their networks and the industry that enables them to operate.
In Dunkirk, we've been tipped off. A group is on the move.
Yeah.
Their intended destination is obvious, marked by the fluorescent life vests slung over shoulders or packed in bin liners.
Police are here just observing what's going on. But, I mean, look at the life. It's quite clear what's going on.
This is the final leg of their land route, the last bus stop to Britain.
Where's everybody going? You don't know? Don't know where you're going? I see you've got some life jackets. OK. Are you trying to get to England?
It seems many of the life vests are purchased here in Dunkirk's sports superstore, Decathlon. €30 each. We witnessed migrants trying them on for size and a steady flow of new stock arriving in store. Hardly surprising considering the demand. Decathlon says it's in regular contact with authorities. Our journey began in London with people smuggler Ali.
How much does it cost these days?
Now for a boat,
Yeah.
from France to here,
Yeah.
2,000 or 3,000 pounds each. All the time hiding in the jungle are the workers, but the boss, nobody will find him. He's somebody in Germany, Holland, Belgium. The middle people, they get everyone ready.
Boarding the bus to no one knows where, police stop 2 individuals, but the rest continue. Hidden among the group are the middlemen Ali talked about. Take note of this man in the cap. We will see him again.
I'm pleased to say Jason has joined us. Excellent reporting, Jason, as always. I mean, we're seeing really inside the operation here. What did you learn about this process, you know, this idea that we're smashing these gangs? It seems like the gangs are just operating.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been this big drive to try and smash the gangs, and there have been some successes with the National Crime Agency with breaking up of around about 52 networks in the last 5 years. But there's obviously, we've seen from the flow of people that they still continue to come. And what we see in this report is how integrated the gangs are, how the networks are stretched across internationally. You know, we've got this inside man who's telling us what's going on. You see on this image here, all these children going through.
There's children going in.
It's extraordinary. I actually found out that children go half price.
Oh, my goodness, they have a discount for the kids.
They have a discount for the kids, according to a family who we spoke to. But we look at these networks of middlemen who are actually in the camps. They're kind of acting like tour operators, saying, look, this is when the boats are going to go. They're not going to tell you until a few hours before, right, this is the bus you're going to get. You know, and they shepherd them along, and then you'll see these guys in the water because they're the guys not with the life jackets, not getting on the boats. And one of the things that occurred to me is how easy it would be to pick these guys out. And we do sometimes see the police doing that. For example, a guy falls off the boat at one point, and the police do actually arrest him on the beach. And we see that in the longer piece, which is going out at 10:30, by the way.
Excellent.
And we also look at the bosses. We look at the payments, how the payments are often held in trust in the UK. And we just look at the blatancy of it, you know, the buying of the life jackets in the shop down the road in the Decathlon, how the police can see everybody getting on the bus, and how difficult it is for them when there's, in those dunes, around about 100 people
in the early hours, poised, ready to run across the beach, and there's only 3 police officers on the beach. I mean, really, how are they actually going to do anything? Is it even any point having those police officers on the beach? Other than, I suppose, to try and pick out those smugglers, those shepherders, who are the middlemen, as Ali describes them, who are working for the bosses.
And the number of people crossing the channel just show how great the demand still is, Jason. The government has talked about smashing the gangs, as you've referred to, but they are expected to announce tougher measures next week. They're talking about modelling the plans on Denmark's proposals, which is seen as being the toughest in Europe.
Yeah.
Do you think that would act as a disincentive from what you've seen of how the gangs are operating?
I think some of those policies are very interesting. Certainly, for example, making it harder to claim asylum, having a temporary asylum so that you're not going to get a long-term stay. When you think about what you go through and how much you pay as well, we spoke to a family who spent £45,000 getting the whole family across from Turkey using the Kurdish network, and the boats. If just the boats alone. We heard from Ali there about £2,000 per person to get on the boats. That expense. But on the other hand, we spoke to a family from Sudan, for example, who was just saying, I was saying, look, it's dangerous out there. And he says, not as dangerous as Sudan. Yeah. Fair point. Absolutely. OK, he's in France now, but the point is they paid to get to the UK, and that's their destination. And there's a lot of pull factors in the UK. That's what the Home Secretary is going to try and stop. But that even with the things that we're talking about bringing in, I think, there's going to be resistance within her own MPs. But also, I think there are still a lot of pull factors in the UK, and those people we saw desperate to get across the channel.
Absolutely. It's just such important reporting, Jason. Thank you so much for that. I don't know if we can play those pictures again of those people who are running to get on the boat, because I think this really tells the story. A picture says 1,000 words, right? We're always told that this is an invasion of, what did the reforms say? Fighting age men. We're seeing women, children, young people, families here. And as Jason points out, this is the desperation of people spending £45,000 to travel across the world, to cross the channel in a dangerous boat. It's just extraordinary. It's almost impossible to put yourself in the mind of a person that's going to do that, to take their children, their young children, on a dangerous boat there, carried on his dad's shoulders, just...
Yeah, and obviously an issue that people care an awful lot about, which is why the Home Secretary is going to make this announcement next week, we're told, with new measures designed to stop that flow of people.
Yeah, Jason's report at 10:30, as he said.
Indeed. Let's move on to the BBC now, which has apologised to President Trump over the misleading edit of his January the 6th speech in an edition of Panorama. But it won't be fulfilling his other demand for compensation.
We don't think. The chairman of the corporation, Samir Shah, has written to the White House calling it an error of judgment and said the programme would not be broadcast again, but disagreed that the president had been defamed. Well, let's bring in our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer. Morning to you, Katie. So, look, the BBC have done some parts of what the president wanted. There's one part outstanding. What happens next?
Yeah, look, interestingly, the statement that the BBC's put out says that the BBC chair, Samir Shah, has also sent a personal letter to the president as well. You wonder what was in that and whether or not that will in itself help to sort of sweeten the mood within that President Trump has over all of this. In his response to the BBC's response to the legal demands, President Trump gets 2 out of the 3 things that he was requesting. This show won't be broadcast again, and he gets an apology. And I think few people would actually question the BBC can even sort of stand on its own and say that it should not apologise over it, because it was a misleading edit. Equally, though, this is such a pivotal time for the BBC. It is under such an attack from all quarters that it is important that it comes out fighting and defends its journalism, because its whole reputation is at stake at the moment. From a legal point of view, throughout the week, people have been questioning whether or not it is even right that Trump could bring this defamation case. It's been brought in Florida, which is not even clear whether or not this programme was aired in Florida.
Not right.
But also the issue of whether or not President Trump has been defamed. He did tell supporters to fight like hell. So I think that in itself would be a hard argument to
And he won the election, let's not forget.
And so many different outlets poured over his speech. So many people went, analysed his words on that. But look, for the BBC, this was the time, really, that it's been a bruising and a real battering that it's taken this week. So it had to come out really fighting with a very strong response. You, though, in the next last hour, have spoken to Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, who we've been wanting to hear from all week. And she gave us an insight into how much she has been interacting with the corporation, at least.
I've been speaking daily, frequently, to the chairman of the board, the director general and senior members of the BBC, and they have consulted lawyers and are absolutely confident that they are protected against defamation. That doesn't mean to say for a moment that they don't accept that there was a serious mistake here, and that's the basis on which they have apologised to the President of the United States, as well as to the House of Commons and to the public for the mistakes that were made. The most important thing now going forwards is that they get the right processes in place, they have the right mix of editorial experience at the very top of the organisation, and that we put them on a firm footing for the future through the Charter Review. I'm determined to support them with that.
So Lisa Nandy there, reflecting that the BBC feels pretty confident in its case legally, but they're going to feel a bit uncomfortable today, aren't they? The Telegraph reporting that there was a previous similar mistake made by Newsnight, another of the BBC's programmes.
Yeah, when it's standing, the fact that it is having to come out and stand by its journalism, it's certainly not a good look, is it? That the waters are muddied once again by the fact that we now have this claim that there was a Newsnight edition where they made a similar edit, which was actually pulled up by a contributor.
From the same speech, wasn't it?
From the same speech, pulled up immediately by a contributor that was on afterwards, to say, look, you shouldn't have cut it like that. So I think that there's going to be a lot of focus really on how that was dealt with immediately afterwards. And once again, look, it's just caused sort of chaos and turmoil at the BBC this week.
And that's even before we've got Donald Trump's response.
Yeah, which we all waited for. TikTok on his Truth Social. Right,
yes,
Katie?
indeed, Katie,
Thanks
thank
so much
you.
for that. Appreciate it. Now, resident doctors gathering on picket lines across the country this morning as they begin their latest 5 days of strike action.
Yeah, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has branded the fresh walkout as reckless and irresponsible. Well, the union representing doctors, the British Medical Association, is demanding a 26% pay rise. So let's bring in Molly Malone. She's at St Thomas's Hospital this morning. So, Molly, the strike began at 7 this morning. Give us an idea of what the mood is down there.
Well, it's just getting started, the picket line here in central London just behind me. And as you say, it marks the start of 5 days of strike action by resident doctors. We used to call them junior doctors, and they make up around half of the NHS's doctors in England. Essentially, what it's about this time is what's known as pay restoration, with the BMA, which is the union that's representing them, saying that pay levels now for resident doctors are not what they were a couple of decades ago, back in 2008, and once you account for inflation, they're far below what they'd want them to be. From the government's perspective, they say, look, people will remember when they came into office last year, one of the first things that they did was kind of deal with it, and the government's position now is very much that they're not budging. They gave them what they say is a 30% pay rise over the course of 3 years, which they say is better than any other public sector worker, and they're not prepared to move on it. But the BMA say, look, that's still 20% lower in real terms than what it was in 2008. So that's the latest stalemate, if you like, that resident doctors do accept that there will be disruption. The NHS Confederation said that when junior doctors last strike back in the summer, well, then you saw 50,000 or so postponed procedures and appointments. And of course, we are now not in the summer. We're going into the depths of winter, and already you've got flu cases rising earlier than you would expect in previous years. The NHS, though, have said that they'll keep things going, including non-urgent care like knee and hip operations, and the advice still is very much that if you've got a GP appointment, if you've got planned non-urgent urgent care, well, then you should still attend your appointments.
Molly, thanks very much indeed. Really interesting to see what kind of impact this strike does have. Thanks very much indeed. But no sign of the government budging on this. Wes Streeting being absolutely firm.
Feet dug in, thinks he's given enough money, and will not, he says, bend to the wills of the union. We'll see where that goes as that strike gets underway. As Molly said, we're entering winter and the pressures that the NHS will be under. Now, a woman with a brain tumour who has just weeks to live says that she is frustrated she doesn't have the option of an assisted death. The assisted dying bill is being debated in the House of Lords later on.
Yes, Edwina Rumney says she wishes she had more control over how she dies. Our North of England correspondent Greg Milam has this report.
I've enjoyed a very independent, active life.
4 weeks before we spoke to Ed, she'd been driving her camper van and volunteering. Then came the diagnosis of an aggressive, inoperable brain tumour and just weeks to live.
I'd say my life as I've known it is very definitely over. It's definitely gone. Looking to my life for however long it is now, which I'm told isn't likely to be very long, it's not my life. It's not. I'm not going to be in control of it. This malignant growth in my brain is going to choose for me.
She supports the assisted dying bill making its way through Parliament. It'll come too late for her, but not for others.
I feel I should have a choice. I feel that it should be me who says, well, I think I'll get off this bus now. You know, I've reached where I want to go to, and I'm quite happy. I've had a good life.
There are opponents to this law who will say that there are people who are vulnerable, who maybe won't have that choice, that other people will make that choice for them. When you hear the opposition to the law, what do you say?
I don't want other people to restrict my choice, and I accept that there are vulnerable people, but the people who are looking after them are the ones that will have to be honest and make the choices, as they already will do for vulnerable people. I think it should be made easier for the people and their families. That's my wish for other people in the future, that it would be an organised, dignified way. I mean, you know, dying shouldn't be a horrific thing. I think most of us aren't afraid of death. We're afraid of what we have to go through before death. I think you should be able to make a decision and say, right, you know, let's make a plan, and we're going to have a kitchen disco next Friday, and, you know, we should be doing that, and then, you know, say goodbye, and that'll be fine. It would.
Greg Milam, Sky News.
Absolutely heartbreaking story being told there. If you scan that QR code that you see on screen, now you can watch Greg's full report.
Indeed. Do stay with us. We've got lots coming up for you. We're going to be talking to someone called Professor Neil Torok.
Now, this.
He is the Higgs Chair of Theoretical Physics.
Oh, like Higgs boson?
Exactly that.
Like I know what I'm doing.
He does know what he's doing. I bet you don't understand.
I have no idea what it's about. But we'll ask.
Discovered. We're going to ask. Stay with us.
Well, welcome back now. Following 2 years of war, 4 bereaved Israeli and Palestinian families are coming together here in the UK to transform their pain into what they hope is a force for reconciliation, dialogue and, of course, lasting peace. Together, they'll lead a series of events designed to inspire understanding and empathy. The visit marks the first time that the UK Friends of the Parents Circle have welcomed members to the UK since the October the 7th attacks in 2023.
Yeah, well, joining us now is Ibrahim Al-Jafri, whose cousin was fatally shot earlier this year, and Mai Albini Perry, who lost loved ones during the October the 7th attack. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. First of all, Ibrahim, tell us what's brought you here to the UK. You've got a series of events planned. Explain a little bit about what you're trying to achieve.
So the PCFF is a place where bereaved Israeli and Palestinian families use their sorrow for understanding and dialogue instead of revenge. And we are trying to spread that message and trying to get it across to people that this way is possible. And we have proved that through a lot of our events and a lot of our activities.
I mean, it has to be done with you guys. Mike, I want to bring you in. Before we talk about your role in this, just tell us about what happened with your family. On October 7th.
On October 7th, first of all, my uncle was actually a British citizen. He was born and raised in Manchester most of his life. He was just there on a visit. He was supposed to have a flight back on the same day, which unfortunately he didn't make it. My grandfather, who lived there for the past 60 years, was kidnapped into Gaza, and he was being held hostage for about 4 months until he was killed, and his body was recovered back to Israel a few months later.
I mean, the stories of pain that we're feeling around this table are huge. You guys are young men. It's up to your generation to try and bring this together. How do you think that divide can be bridged through people like yourselves?
I think, first of all, as Ibrahim said, dialogue. I think it's kind of a proof that we can work things out with each other. We've been trying wars for so many years now, and it never brought us anything. And my grandfather also was a very big peace activist, and as many Israelis, he was also a soldier. And he fought many wars, and coming out of those wars and still fighting for peace and wanting peace for everybody on the land, Israelis and Palestinians, for me, that's like a proof and a very big inspiration for me to carry on his legacy.
And Ibrahim, tell us about your own loss, what your own family has been through, and how hard it is to talk about peace when you have lost someone close to you.
Right. So I have lost my cousin when I was 9 years old, actually. And at that time, I didn't fully understand the meaning of death. I only understood that his mother was screaming his name and only silence followed her screams. And it's definitely hard for someone full of sorrow and a feeling of revenge to talk about peace. But when you understand that this is the only way possible, this is how it can be effective, how it can be meaningful. That's the only way.
Ibrahim, it is the only way, of course, for people to live in that region of the world. After what we've seen for the past few years, with the 70,000 Palestinians killed, 1,200 Israelis taken hostage, and the pain that has been caused there. You used the word revenge a couple of times now. Do you think that there is enough feeling among your generation, and perhaps the politicians, the leaders really need to hear this, that revenge, that sort of recrimination cycle that we've been in can be over after this one? Or do you have hope that can happen?
Well, the hope, I have hope myself, but the thing is, why I keep doing this is to spread that message. If it was already there and everybody understood it, I wouldn't be doing this. So this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm spreading the message, so we can have enough people to believe in this so that it can actually make some change.
Mamai, do you agree with that? And given where we're at the moment, a ceasefire has been agreed. There is hope that a wider peace deal can be settled on, but there are still a lot of questions around that, aren't there? How do you feel that now, how important is now in bringing people together, do you think?
Yeah, so I think the past 2 years have been probably the hardest regarding the conflict that's been going on for 80 years. And you hear people saying, like, I've been a very strong believer in peace and being a peace activist until October 7th, but now we don't believe in it anymore. But I take my hope mainly from the history. I think there have been such bad conflicts and war, some of them much longer. And when I look at our personal history of the Jewish people and the Holocaust, everything comes to an end eventually. And I have the hope that we will solve it eventually. I keep saying, if not me, then my children. If not my children, then my grandchildren. If not them, then my great-grandchildren. But eventually, it's going to happen.
With that thought in mind, then, to both of you, what do you want to see from leaders? You've got a prime minister in Israel who's been criticised for not ending the war sooner when he could have. You've got a president in America who could have perhaps put more pressure on, has finally brought the war to an end in some respects. And you've got leadership in the Palestinian Authority, which many people find ineffective. What do we need in terms of leadership on both sides of this to try and bring this to an end?
Listen, we are not politicians, and we are far from being politicians, but the leaders could learn a bit from how we understand each other so that they can advocate for understanding as well. We have proved time and time again that it is possible to sit on one table, and the leaders can learn from that.
You agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I want to see leaders that want to, first of all, speak to each other, sit at the same table, trying to get to some understanding. War should always be the last resort.
Well, we really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having us.
Coming in here as part of your trip to the UK.
Important conversation to start, and I wish you all the very best in your work, man.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, something else.
Completely different.
Absolutely. Ariana Grande, the actor, was in Singapore for the premiere of their new movie, Wicked for Good, when this happened to her while walking down the red carpet. Let's play the video and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Now, here is Miss Grande walking with her co-star Cynthia Erivo and Michelle Yeoh, I think that is in the middle. When, pay attention, this happens.
There we go. There's the guy who jumped over a barricade. He's now been charged with being a public nuisance. You can see that Cynthia Erivo really leapt to Ariana Grande's aid there. Michelle Yeoh also consoling her as well. And you can understand why her fellow stars would be quite protective over Ariana Grande. I mean, obviously, the guy went and put his arm round her in particular. But this is a young woman who's talked about suffering from post-traumatic stress after that bomb attack, of course, during one of her concerts in Manchester back in 2017. So you'd imagine that was quite an alarming moment.
I mean, you can see from her face that she's terrified by what's happened. This individual, as you say, he's been charged by the authorities there. He's got form for doing this sort of thing, disrupting public events. I think he disrupted a weekend concert in Australia, a Katy Perry concert as well. He managed to get on the track in the 2024 Olympics as well during the 100 metres. So this individual has form for putting himself in the wrong place for likes on social media. And for some reason, he chose to do it to Ariana Grande, who, as you say, Anna, has suffered trauma in public before. You can see how scared she was. And it's nice to see her co-stars putting their arms around her and making sure she's all right.
Absolutely. Now then, we're going to talk physics now.
We are?
My worst subject at school, but I'm going to concentrate hard. It was the theory, eventually proven correct, that changed our understanding of the universe. In 1964, Professor Peter Higgs was a researcher at the University of Edinburgh when he predicted the existence of a new particle known as the God particle.
Yes, getting my notes. Decades later, his prediction was confirmed and he earned a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm very pleased to say we're joined by Professor Neil Turok, who's the Higgs Chair of Theoretical Physics at Edinburgh University.
Not Peace Prize, I should say. It's a Nobel Prize, but it wasn't...
Did I say Peace Prize?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I wondered why you were chuckling at me, Professor. Because you could sense I didn't know anything about physics, but just because I said it was a Peace Prize. No, not quite that. Well, but it's a worthy prize that the Professor won. Just tell us why he won that Nobel Prize.
Well, the Peace Prize is a lot more important than the Physics Prize. Let's start with that. But no, he won the Physics Prize as a very shy, almost reclusive academic scholar who was unknown. And little pieces of the jigsaw puzzle were sort of floating around among academia. But he happened to be the person who put it all together and realized how to explain the basic properties of particles of which we're all made. Namely, they have masses and electric charges, and they acquire these masses from the medium they move in. So he basically postulated that the vacuum, empty space, is full of this thing called a Higgs field, a bit like the water in the sea, and the particles are like fish moving in the sea, where the water provides resistance to their motion. So because of this Higgs medium, which we all live in, we are able to sit in one place and have this conversation. Instead, if it wasn't there, we would be zipping around at the speed of light, like particles of light. Amazing. So we have to be very grateful for the existence of the Higgs field, which Peter Higgs discovered.
Well, yeah, and I wish you'd been my physics teacher. You make it sound like poetry. It sounds amazing.
Very
so,
good,
yeah,
Professor.
there's a lot of talk of the God particle. Why was that so groundbreaking, in simple terms?
Well, people thought the vacuum was empty. They thought empty space was empty. That's the most naive idea. Peter Higgs actually took clues from material science. You know, people discovered strange phenomena in metals, for example. When you cool them to very low temperatures, they become superconducting. And that's strange. There's no electrical resistance at all. You can send a current through a superconducting wire and it will last forever. And so he took clues from that it's possible for for something to happen in the vacuum, which would, the technical term is, we say, break the symmetry. So all of physics is based on symmetry. It's more like art than poetry, actually. And Peter Higgs found a way to very carefully break that symmetry so that particles get a mass and they get charges and they become different from each other. And the reason this happens is because of the medium that they live in. And this idea that the vacuum is important and not just empty fed into many other developments, such as the discovery that the vacuum in space around us is full of energy called the cosmological constant, which is now driving the expansion of the universe. And so this is really a very all-encompassing idea. And Peter opened the door towards our actually understanding the whole universe. He hated the name God particle, by the way.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. He hated the name God particle. Because for two reasons. First of all, this has nothing to do with God. This is a consequence of logical reasoning and scientific inference. Okay, so that's how we discovered this. There was a long chain of arguments and experiments and clues from observation, which led to his invention. And secondly, it's not really the particle that's important, it's more the medium. It's a substance which fills space. It does have a particle, that's how we confirm the medium is there, because it has excitations like sound waves which travel in it, and that's the Higgs particle. But the medium is really what's important.
Absolutely. Finally, Professor, he's donated this Nobel Prize to the university, which I guess is a great...
The medal. He's donated the medal. Yes.
Right. What I'm fascinated by is this individual sort of working away and being able to discover something that changes our understanding. It reminds me of, you know, the work that was done around the atomic bomb and that kind of discovery, this kind of work that an individual does that completely expands our understanding of our entire position in the universe. It's a fascinating thing. I mean, what was he like as a person to work around and be around?
He was a lovely person, very kind, very shy, very reclusive. He never had a TV, didn't have the internet. He lived in quiet. He loved Edinburgh because Edinburgh is a sort of place which in the past had encouraged free thinking and originality. So it has that kind of climate, and it suited him very well. But it's a lovely story because it captures how somebody working on their own, using purely theoretical reasoning. I mean, he never did an experiment in his life. This was pencil and paper stuff. But using pure theoretical reasoning, thinking very deeply, suddenly glimpses something nobody had ever seen before. He wrote a paper which is one of the shortest scientific papers that ever won a Nobel Prize. It's only 1.5 pages long. But it's very clear, and it makes a prediction that there should be this particle, this kind of sound wave in the medium, which could be seen in an experiment. And 50 years later, in the largest experiment ever conducted, the Large Hadron Collider, at a cost of 10 billion euros, this particle was found, just as he had predicted.
Just amazing.
So it tells us something about ourselves. And it says that very quiet, very shy, very unusual people. I mean, he's a very unlikely person to make such a big discovery. And he was unknown when he did make the discovery, and barely known afterwards for decades. So this person, is an example of somebody who's can be very unappreciated, and yet he can make a discovery which changes the world. So for me, the lesson is we should realize that quiet, shy, reclusive, maybe a bit odd people actually should be, can become incredible assets to the whole of humanity.
They already are. They certainly are. Professor Neil Turek, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
as I said,
exactly. You got me excited about physics, which is
Again.
the first time I've used that sentence.
Ever.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
good.
really
good
interesting.
conversation. Thank you, Professor.
Now we're going to return to politics now. The beginning, as we've been telling you, of a 5-day strike by resident doctors. So let's talk to the Shadow Health Secretary, Stuart Andrew, now. Stuart Andrew, very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. I will come to the resident doctors strike in just a moment, but first of all, I just want to ask you about the news this morning that it looks like Rachel Reeves and the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, have had a change of heart when it comes to raising income tax in the budget. Is that news that you welcome, first of all?
Well, absolutely. I don't want to see any sort of tax rises, particularly income tax rises, but it really does sort of show the sort of mess they're making of it, because, the very prospect that there was going to be an increase in income tax has already had an impact on confidence within households. I was talking to the hospitality industry just this week, who were saying that their members are reporting that customers are not coming as frequently because they were worried about potential increases in income tax. But equally, it shows that this government just doesn't have the backbone that it needs, because they said they were going to deal with welfare reform. They then capitulated, they backtracked, and that ended up costing us more money in the end. And here we are again. They obviously have had a backlash this week, and they've gone back on what they were suggesting. But all of the time, it's had a real impact on the economy, and that's what's really worrying and frustrating.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what's actually in the budget. The government keen to point out that nothing is set in stone. The budget's still 12 days away. But let's move on to the resident doctors, known before, of course, as junior doctors, 5-day strike that starts today. Doctors from the British Medical Association are insisting that medics' pay is still way down on 2008 levels, down by a fifth, they say, and they want the government to finish the journey, as they call it, towards restoring that pay. Do you have some sympathy for them?
Well, first of all, let's not forget that the measure that they're using, the ONS has warned against, saying it isn't an accurate reflection. But equally, the Secretary of State for Health, Wes Streeting, said in opposition that dealing with these strikes was simple. It's easy. Just get round the table and you can sort it all out. He is now realising, now that he is in charge, and now that he has the responsibility, that it isn't as simple as that. And, you know, he said we've solved the strikes because they gave the inflation-busting pay rises. But we've warned at the time that unless you put some conditions on that too, such as how do you get better productivity in the NHS as part of that deal, then they will just come back for more. And sadly, we were right, and that is what we are seeing today. And my concern is the impact that that's going to have on so many patients up and down the country who are expecting to have an appointment or a treatment in these coming days and will no longer be having them for some time yet.
But the whole issue of pay restoration and the fact that these doctors are so angry because they say they're not being paid enough is a legacy of the last government, isn't it? I mean, you could have tackled this when the Tories were in office.
So the reality is that if that had been the case, then the near 29% that they just got would, as Wes said, will resolve it. Well, it hasn't. And I'm afraid I have to say there are certain elements within the BMA who have become quite militant in this area, and they are doing serious harm. Actually, if you look in the Times today, they have done a poll of some doctors and found that the majority do not support these strikes. And I've spoken to people within the BMA who are really concerned about the direction the organisation's going. But, you know, things are going to get worse as well, because this government are introducing the Employment Rights Bill, which will mean that the threshold needed to call a strike is going to be reduced, and they're going to get rid of the minimum service levels that would ensure we had the safe number of nurses and doctors and porters and catering staff within a hospital. That's going to be scrapped. So what is a difficult situation at the moment, I predict is only going to get worse in the future.
Well, you've announced that the Tories would ban strikes by doctors, but how would that tackle any of these underlying issues? Wouldn't it risk further slumps in morale, and wouldn't it just end up seeing more doctors tempted to leave the country, as so many are now?
Well, we already have this policy for other critical people within our country. So the police, the army,
a total ban on protest.
They're not allowed to strike. But we still see plenty of people applying to go into those positions knowing that. The reality here is that we need to ensure that the patient's safety is first and in the forefront of our minds. And that is why we're saying that we would introduce that as a policy. It's done in other parts of the world. In Ontario, they have exactly the same policy because they also recognise how important it is to make sure there is a functioning health service happening at all times.
Well, as you say, armed forces and police are completely banned from striking, but there are other essential workers like ambulance staff and railway workers who operate under minimum service requirements, but they still do retain the right to strike. So why would you take that right away from doctors and not those other essential workers?
Well, because it's about the health of our nation. It's about the lives. The people's lives are in their hands. That's why it's so important. But it couples with the minimum service levels that we need to see. This government are scrapping those. I think that's dangerous. I'm really worried about patient safety by scrapping those. And I'm afraid, I think the government are going to rue the day they've even suggested doing this, because I think they're going to have real problems on their hands in the future.
Well, Stuart Andrew, we appreciate your time this morning. Shadow Health Secretary, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, planning says they're going to rue the day that they made those decisions, as you put to them. The Conservatives had plenty of time in office to try and resolve this, and of course there were strikes under the Conservatives, but it does seem as if the BMA are going to be back out in force, I think, forward.
As Wes Streeting has said, he is not going to give in to their demands, and we've got a tough budget coming up in just a couple of weeks, so I don't think it's likely to happen. Let's see what happens with that, though. All
right, let's turn to a bit of sport. Jackie is going to be joining us very soon, talking about a big boxing match coming up this weekend between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn.
A rematch.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Whole lot of sports news around, as ever. Jackie is here.
Morning, Jackie.
Morning again to you, Jackie.
Morning.
And you've had another busy week, talking to 2 boxers ahead of a big fight tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. Before we get on to the boxing, because Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn fighting again for loads of money, people are going, oh, you know, it's a bit of a fantasy fight, it's not a real fight, we're only fighting because of their dads and all that. But, you know...
Still a spectacle, isn't it?
It's
a spectacle, it's a nice prize
The first
fight,
fight was like fight of the year. You know, for me, it was fantastic. You know, reportedly 8 million to one of them, to Conor, 10 million to Eubank Jr. I mean, that's generational wealth, isn't it, when you do it twice?
You get punched in the head to do it, but still, it's money.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's the downside.
Yeah, absolutely. We should mention that England played last night in absolutely filthy conditions at Wembley. It was a World Cup qualifier. They're already qualified. It was another clean sheet. But the interesting, I suppose, conundrum for Thomas Tuchel is, who's he going to pick at number 10? He's got an embarrassment of riches there.
It's a nice problem to have.
It's a really nice problem to have. Morgan Rogers has been doing really well in that position, you know, for the team. Jude Bellingham's back from injury now. He was sitting on the bench, came on after 65 minutes, full of vim and vigour and energy and purpose and sort of star quality, I suppose. Eze came on as well, and so did Phil Foden. All of them came on and did really well, and then they all combined for Eze's goal to make it 2-0. So it's actually a nice... It's a nice problem for him to have. They've got Albania again this weekend, the last qualifier, and, you know, the auditions continue.
It's ongoing, isn't it? It's better to have one person playing there behind Harry Kane than trying to shoehorn your best players in, like used to do with Lampard and Gerrard.
Yeah.
You know, impact subs and all that sort of stuff.
So, to go back to the boxing very quickly, and we were talking about, you know, it's the generational feud, really, of the two fathers. But what was quite funny, chatting to them, talking to Conor Benn, saying, well, it is what it is. It's 2 Nepo babies going into the ring, you know, 2 guys who've had it really easy their whole life, trying to fulfil their ambitions of being, you know, top-level boxers.
They make millions in the process.
One's going up in weight, one's coming down in weight. And it's just it's a very interesting dynamic, the fact that the two fathers were there yesterday for the head-to-head as well. And they talk about, they really disliked each other at the time, but there's respect there now. But the two sons do not
So Eubanks Jr. won the last fight, right?
He did.
Unanimous points decision.
And they both ended up in hospital, literally metres apart from each other. So there's a lot of respect in there. They've shared, not quite a hospital bed, but they, it was a difficult fight. They left everything on the canvas, and whether they do that again. The other big talking point briefly from yesterday as well was Anthony Joshua.
Oh, yeah.
Is he going to go back in the ring against Jake Paul?
Don't.
Some criticism for that, but an awful lot of money involved. 70 million.
It's nice. I won't express my opinions.
We'll chat about all of that in the next hour.
Definitely.
We'll be back shortly.
Stay with us.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 9 o'clock and this is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how things are looking.
The Chancellor ditches what would have been a manifesto-busting rise in income tax, a major policy U-turn just a fortnight before the budget.
The BBC has apologised as Donald Trump's deadline approaches, but the Culture Secretary says the corporation is confident it didn't defame the president.
they have consulted lawyers and are absolutely confident that they are protected against defamation.
We're on the picket line as resident doctors start their 5 days of strike action.
Well, should the BBC be coughing up to President Trump at the expense of the licence fee payer? We're going to discuss that later on this hour.
And our home editor, Jason, exposes the cross-channel people smuggling gangs taking migrants over the water.
Thanks for being with us. Plenty to get to this hour, starting with the Prime Minister and Chancellor scrapping their plans to break their manifesto pledge and raise income tax. We understand here at Sky News that Downing Street backed down after seeing anger rising from Labour MPs as well as voters.
Yes, it's a backtrack on what would have been a hugely consequential policy change, and it's happening just 12 days before the Chancellor is due to deliver the budget. So let's bring in Amanda once again. And Amanda, we were reflecting in the last couple of hours what a moment this was. They were laying the groundwork. Everyone was anticipating a rise in income tax come the budget, but it looks like those plans have been reversed.
Yes, it's a bit of a bombshell decision this morning, really, isn't it? Because, as you say, it's been weeks, months even, the Chancellor and other ministers have been refusing to deny suggestions that they might be looking at breaching their manifesto and putting up income tax in order to fill that £30 billion or so hole in the public finances. Just last week, we had this very unusual press conference held by the Chancellor early on in the morning, which seemed entirely designed to try and get the excuses in early, really, lay the groundwork for what was to come in the budget with less than 2 weeks now, explaining the difficult financial situation, blaming Brexit, blaming Trump tariffs, blaming the Tories, blaming the war in Ukraine, and effectively saying everyone will need to play their part, and then arguing that she would have to act in the national interest, not for political expediency. So there was such widespread briefing to journalists as well that this was going to be a 2p increase on income tax, offset slightly by a 2p decrease in national insurance, which would have effectively protected people who earn less than £50,000 from the impact of this, but would have hit higher earners, pensioners and landlords as well. But now it seems there's been such a backlash internally. MPs were extremely worried about the impact of such a seismic breach of their central pledge at the last election not to put up income tax, VAT or national insurance. We had the new deputy leader of the party saying it would be a breach of trust in politics were this to go ahead. And now it does seem that there has been a really dramatic U-turn.
Yeah, and what does that say about what's going on in government as well? I mean, are they feeling nervous about pushing anything through now because Labour MPs have approved in the past that they can block policy?
Well, certainly that looks like the unavoidable conclusion, doesn't it? I mean, I think it's important to say, nothing had been officially announced and nothing is set in stone until the Chancellor stands up and delivers the budget on November the 26th. And that's the official line that we've had from the Treasury, that nothing was ever announced. Lisa Nandy saying nothing had ever been confirmed, speaking to you this morning, insisting the Chancellor is someone who would always fiercely stand up for the national interest and that she wouldn't be sort of pushed around by the kind of political backlash. But that briefing that we've seen this week and the kind of disastrous way it played out for Downing Street and suggesting that there was some kind of coup coming down the line for the Prime Minister after the budget because of anger about this, blaming it on Wes Streeting, the kind of his claims of a toxic culture as he denied it and the real backlash that's seen. They're in a bit of a mess, and we saw with the welfare bill changes they were trying to make, they weren't able to get that through. And now it seems they're not able to push this through either, and the PM and the Chancellor are both looking really damaged by it.
Yeah, really interesting. Amanda, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you for that, Amanda. Just a line to bring you on the back of that as markets open. UK government bonds are under pressure because of some of the turmoil that we're seeing politically. There's been a sell-off of government bonds, which are, of course, known as gilts. The yields on 30-year gilts is up. Now, that happens when the price of a bond falls and bond pricing has gone down because people are selling them off because of a lack of confidence in what may well happen coming forward in the budget. All this speculation about will they, won't they raise taxes has now led to a bit of jitters on the markets, which is not what the Chancellor will want, but reinforces, I think, Anna, the issue that the government is facing, that they make a decision, or not even make a decision, it's a U-turn on something that hasn't actually happened yet, make a decision or perhaps not make a decision because they want to try and assuage their MPs and perhaps voters, but that decision then has an impact in the markets.
Yeah, and the messaging that's being put out, as you say, we haven't had the budget yet. The government very keen to say that nothing is set in stone until we hear that speech. But I guess the speculation starts now over how Rachel Reeves will fill that gap in the public finances if income tax is not the way to go. So lots of questions will be answered, of course, come the budget.
26th November, date for your diaries, I'm sure it's already in. All right, next we're going to talk about the migration crisis. And the Home Secretary is expected to announce plans next week aimed at making the UK less attractive for people coming here on small boats. It's understood Shabana Mahmood is looking at how it's done in Denmark, where rules there are considered some of the toughest in Europe.
Yeah, that's right. Our home editor, meanwhile, Jason Farrell, has been tracking down cross-channel smuggling gangs, exposing their networks and the industry that's enabling them to operate across northern France.
In Dunkirk, we've been tipped off. A group is on the move.
Yeah.
Their intended destination is obvious, marked by the fluorescent life vests slung over shoulders or packed in bin liners.
Police are here just observing what's going on. But, I mean, look at the life. It's quite clear what's going on.
This is the final leg of their land route, the last bus stop to Britain.
Where's everybody going? You don't know. You don't know where you're going. I see you've got some life jackets. OK. Are you trying to get to England?
It seems many of the life vests are purchased here in Dunkirk's sports superstore, Decathlon. €30 each. We witnessed migrants trying them on for size and a steady flow of new stock arriving in store. Hardly surprising considering the demand. Decathlon says it's in regular contact with authorities. Our journey began in London with people smuggler Ali.
How much does it cost these days?
Now for a boat,
from
France to here, £2,000 or £3,000 each. All the time hiding in the jungle are the workers, but the boss, nobody will find him. He's somebody in Germany, Holland, Belgium. The middle people, they get everyone ready.
Boarding the bus to no one knows where, police stop 2 individuals, but the rest continue. Hidden among the group are the middlemen Ali talked about. Take note of this man in the cap. We will see him again.
I'm pleased to say Jason is with us now. Jason, extraordinary reporting, of course, from you and team. What did you learn about the way things are working in northern France? It would seem that it's blatant, this is happening, and the authorities really should be doing more to stop them.
Well, what we see and what we're told about as well is this kind of network of middlemen who live in the jungle, which is the camps in northern France. I mean, there was a specific jungle, but now it's a sort of spread out area of camps that keeps moving. We're in one called Tedicum. And those middlemen act almost like tour operators in the sense that they tell the people arriving, when they're likely to be able to leave, who they'll be going with, when they'll be going, how they get to the beach. They are shepherding them along. And we see that man in the cap again in the bigger report, with different groups of people taking them to the water. And we also hear about how they work from someone who's done that job, how much they get paid, how much you pay per boat. He was saying there about £2,000 per person. I think you probably negotiate on that. But people who are going across all the way from the network, say from northern Iraq through Turkey and stuff like that, we spoke to a family of 4 who spent £45,000 to get there, and you see lots of children. I mean, that was one of the things that really surprised me where we were on the
That surprised you as well, Jason? You've done reporting on this before.
Well, we followed a group on that bus. They were all quite young people, and then they sort of went down to the beach in the night, and we saw the police trying to stop them, and absolutely failing, because there were only 3 officers, 1 jeep, and there were about 30, 40 people at that moment, and then there's another 60 more waiting in the dunes. It seemed like the young people went first, they inflated the boat, they'll go out. And what's quite interesting, the boats will load up and go out to sea, and then they'll kind of travel across and go and pick up more people. And one of the boats we found, it actually got into trouble because it was deflating. Because these boats, I mean, they're huge, sort of 20-foot, 30-foot boats, and they had a pump that was the size of a pump that I would use to inflate my child's dinghy. And they're trying to inflate it, and it's going down. And eventually, obviously, the soft-sided boat just comes into the side and everyone spills off and they've got a puncture. If that puncture had happened further out to sea, that would have been it for those people. And they are putting, very young people on these boats. And the other thing we learned is really about the money transactions, where the bosses are based and how they keep at arm's length. And as you say, the blatancy of it, just, the buying of the life jackets in the superstores, lots of people moving in front of police officers with their life jackets, really clear what's going on the commuter buses with the French people on their way to and from work.
It's just extraordinary, Jason. And as I say, really important reporting that we see what's actually happening, because there's a lot of newspaper articles written about the people that are coming across on boats, lots of reports, and we're seeing there the desperation of families bringing on their young children. I mean, as a father, I can't imagine taking my child on a boat like that.
Well, absolutely. And that was just a fraction of your report. We should say that you can see it in full at 10:30, is that right?
10:30, or if you can't wait, you can go onto YouTube.
There we go.
Good.
There we go. There are ways to see the whole thing. But yeah, really interesting. And also when we're going to have this big announcement, as we understand it, from the Home Secretary next week on trying to get tough with these issues, with tougher rules on migrants, and possibly modelling on the Denmark experience, which they feel that they've got results, but whether or not that will act as a disincentive will be interesting to see.
One thing that Jason says about how blatant it seems there as well, one wonders if the French authorities are actually not doing anything like what they can do, because it suddenly becomes someone else's problem once it's pushed out to sea. This has been happening. That camp in Sangatte has been there for over 10 years, as Jason will tell us. They know this problem. That problem has been there, and yet it continues.
Let's move on, because the BBC has apologised to President Trump over the misleading edit of his January the 6th speech in an edition of Panorama, but it won't be fulfilling his other demand for compensation.
No, the BBC chair, Samir Shah, has written to Trump directly in a personal letter calling what happened an error of judgment, saying the programme wouldn't be broadcast again, but disagreeing the president had been defamed. Let's bring in our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer for more on this. Morning to you, Katie. So look, two parts of what Trump wanted have now been done. We're still waiting on his deadline, though, of 10 p.m, I think it is tonight, right?
Yeah, look, all eyes were on the BBC to see exactly how they were going to respond to this. It's a £1 billion legal threat that the president has made. It was important for them now to be on the front foot with this. They have had a couple of weeks where arguably they've been incredibly late, and which has created this crisis of leadership, resulting in these two double resignations last Sunday. They've responded to Donald Trump's legal letter by, as you say, 2 out of 3 of his demands. He won't get, it won't be broadcast again, this episode of Panorama. He's got an apology. But equally, it was so important how the BBC responded to defend its journalism. Yep. Its whole reputation has been sort of called into question over this, and that's what they've done with this. They've said, essentially, they don't believe that Trump has a case to answer here in terms of defamation. In terms of where this has been lodged in Florida, we don't even know actually whether or not it is possible at this stage to say that anyone in Florida had actually seen this. But also, Trump's words, he is the one that told his supporters to fight like hell. You could argue that how do you defame him that much, really, when he did actually say it? Can we bring you another breaking line this morning as well, though? We've just heard from the Creative Industries Union, BECTU, which is one of the biggest unions within the BBC, calling for Sir Robbie Gibb to be removed from the BBC board. Now, Sir Robbie Gibb has proven to be written about so much in the last week in terms of people speculating whether or not he was leading a sort of right-leaning coup to try and oust Tim Davie in the management. BECTU has put out this statement saying, we simply do not see how staff can have faith in the BBC's leadership while a crucial position on the board is filled by someone perceived by many staff and external commentators as sympathetic to or actively part of a campaign to undermine the BBC and influence its political impartiality.
I mean, Katie, but prior to this latest BBC scandal, Robbie Gibb's name has come up quite a few times, hasn't it? I think he was a former advisor to Theresa May, if I'm right. Has he ever spoken out? Has he ever sort of defended himself in public and said his position?
We have been trying to get hold of Sir Robbie Gibb, trust us, all week long. He's, I think we've managed to get hold of his wife, who said that he isn't commenting this week. Right. But he is a very hard man to get hold of. His friends have spoken in his defence. Michael Gove has given an interview to The Times saying that Robbie Gibb was just doing what everyone believes he should do in challenging the editorial sort of ethos at the BBC at the moment. But yes, we're yet to see or hear from Sir Robbie Gibb, but pressure's mounting on him.
Certainly is.
Indeed. Well, Katie, thanks very much indeed. And all eyes now on Truth Social to get Donald Trump's response and find out whether or not this apology and retraction are enough without the compensation.
700 and something million pounds is how it converts to the $1 billion threat. So we will see if Trump accepts the apologies.
Indeed. Now, a woman with a brain tumour who has just weeks to live says she's frustrated she doesn't have the option of an assisted death. The assisted dying bill is being debated in the House of Lords later.
Yeah, Edwina Romney says she wishes she had more control over how she dies. Our North of England correspondent Greg Milam has this report.
I've enjoyed a very independent, active life.
4 weeks before we spoke to Ed, she'd been driving her camper van and volunteering. Then came the diagnosis of an aggressive, inoperable brain tumour and just weeks to live.
I'd say my life as I've known it is very definitely over. It's definitely gone. Looking to my life for however long it is now, which I'm told isn't likely to be very long, it's not my life. It's not... I'm not going to be in control of it. This malignant growth in my brain is going to choose for me.
She supports the assisted dying bill making its way through Parliament. It'll come too late for her, but not for others.
I feel I should have a choice. I feel that it should be me who says, well, I think I'll get off this bus now. You know, I've reached where I want to go to, and I'm quite happy. I've had a good life.
There are opponents to this law who will say that there are people who are vulnerable, who maybe won't have that choice, that other people will make that choice for them. When you hear the opposition to the law, what do you say?
I don't want other people to restrict my choice, and I accept that there are vulnerable people, but the people who are looking after them are the ones that will have to be honest and make the choices, as they already will do for vulnerable people. I think it should be made easier for the people and their families. That's my wish for other people in the future, that it would be an organised, dignified way. I mean, you know, dying shouldn't be a horrific thing. I think most of us aren't afraid of death. We're afraid of what we have to go through before death. I think you should be able to make a decision and say, right, you know, let's make a plan, and we're going to have a kitchen disco next Friday, and, you know, we should be doing that, and then, you know, say goodbye, and that'll be fine. It would.
Greg Milam, Sky News.
Right, well, you can watch Greg's full report. It's just disappeared there, but if you go to our website, you can find Greg's full report with Edwina, who wants to have choice in how she ends her life.
Yeah, really heartbreaking story, that. Do stay with us. We're going to be live on the picket line shortly with the latest updates on that resident doctors' strike, which got underway this morning, due to last for 5 days.
Stay with us.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Now, resident doctors are gathering on picket lines this morning as they start 5 days of strike action.
Yeah, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says that this latest walkout is reckless and irresponsible. The union who represent doctors, the British Medical Association, are demanding a 26% pay rise. Well, our correspondent Molly Malone is at St Thomas's for us this morning. Morning to you, Molly.
Morning. Yeah, the picket line's been underway for the last hour or so now. And what they've been chanting, what are on their placards and boards, is pay restoration. And that's this idea that they feel that since 2008, once you take into account inflation, pay levels are not what they feel they should be and not what they were in 2008. From the point of view of the government, well, people remember when they came into office last year, it was one of the first things that they dealt with. And their position right now is that they're not budging on pay levels. They say they gave resident junior doctors, as they were once known, a 30% pay rise, and that actually, given the challenging economic times that the country is going through, that right now is not the time. And the Wes Streeting has been very clear that they're not going to budge. I'm going to bring in Dr. Jack Fletcher to hear a bit about what you have to say. I mean, just tell us, the public have seen this for years now. What do you think is different now, and are you realistic about what's going to change?
So it is different now. What we've got is tens of thousands of doctors who are being turned away from jobs in the NHS, and that's at a time when patient care is patients coming to harm every single day in our NHS, and yet just last year we turned away 20,000 resident doctors from training jobs in the NHS. So we've got a problem because we aren't training enough doctors, and at the other end we're also losing doctors. More doctors last year than the last decade left the NHS, and that's just because we're not valuing them. And you know, we're willing to do a deal. I said to Wes Streeting on day one, let's get round the table, let's get to a negotiated settlement. It can be over a number of years. We're not asking for anything in one go, but what we do think is necessary is an intervention on this catastrophe when it comes to jobs this year and doctors being turned away from wanting to work in the NHS, and also valuing doctors for the years to come.
You'll know, though, the government say, compared to other public sector workers, actually resident doctors have done quite well with a 29.8% rise over 3 years. I mean, do you accept that resident doctors have done better than others?
I mean, I don't, because, you know, if we look at our pay over the last decade and a bit, it's gone down more than other public sector workers, and we're talking about those numbers. Let's just put them into pounds per hour. You know, doctors went from being paid just over £14 an hour to just over £18 an hour. We think we can resolve the pay aspect of this dispute for as little as £1 an hour in today's money over a number of years. Doesn't have to be in one go. For newly qualified doctors, and we think that's reasonable. And we can look at taking industrial action off the table on pay for a number of years. But the Health Secretary is not just not talking about pay, he won't talk about pay to us. What he's actually recommending in 2026 is a real terms pay cut, and that's not acceptable to any doctor. We've got a problem with, we're hemorrhaging doctors from the NHS, and we think that we need to value them and also train more, get doctors back into the NHS, get them trained to fix the catastrophic situation we've got when it comes to patient care at the moment.
In terms of patient care, I mean, are you aware patients are going to suffer? Is that what you accept?
So I am sorry, I am a patient. I am sorry for any patient who has their care rescheduled today. I was reading this morning about a patient who has had their care rescheduled today, but it's already been rescheduled twice this year. We don't have enough doctors. We are turning thousands of surgeons away from the NHS just last year. We're probably going to do it again in the next year. We're turning thousands of A&E doctors away. NHS England just yesterday said that in just October, 54,000 patients received care on a trolley in A&E and had been waiting there for longer than 12 hours. That is a disgrace, and yet we turned away 13 fully qualified doctors for every A&E job last year, and we're probably going to turn more away this year. That is disgraceful. Patients coming to harm every single day in our health service, and that is on the government and on the Health Secretary.
Thanks, Dr. Jack Fletcher there. I think in terms of what patients can expect for the next 5 days, the NHS have said that any routine care, any non-urgent care, people should go ahead with planned appointments as usual. Clearly, the front door in terms of emergency services types care as well will remain, but clearly the BMA accepting there is going to be some considerable disruption.
Indeed. All right, Molly, for now, outside St Thomas's, thank you for that. All right, well, a little bit later on this morning, I'm going to hear from the Lib Dems who have been calling for the Prime Minister to call President Trump to make sure that he backs down and does not demand that $1 billion, about £750 million, in a defamation suit against the BBC. We heard from the government earlier who said that they haven't spoken to the US administration. That's for the BBC to do, but the Lib Dems want the government to step in.
Let's update you on our top news stories this morning. And Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have ditched plans to raise income tax in this month's budget. That's despite weeks of hints from the Chancellor that a hike might be needed to plug a huge black hole in public finances.
Yeah, with the Home Secretary set to announce plans next week aimed at dealing with illegal migration, Sky News has tracked down and exposed smuggling gangs bringing people across the Channel.
You can see that boat is completely overloaded and there's still other people running out.
And the Culture Secretary said the BBC is confident it did not defame US President Donald Trump as his ultimatum deadline approaches later today. The corporation has issued an apology to President Trump over the editing of a speech in a Panorama programme, but said it will not pay compensation. And that's something we're going to be discussing in just a moment, actually. The BBC's response to President Trump ahead of his 10 p.m. deadline. They've ticked 2 of President Trump's boxes, an apology and a retraction, but they have not agreed to pay any money.
No, so they're not going to pay the money. He says it's his obligation to try and seek that money. We're going to hear from Roger Bolton and Charlie Rowley and get their views on what the BBC should do, remembering that if they do pay those damages, that's licence fee money, which is our money.
Absolutely. But you may have noticed Jackie's here.
Oh, hello Jackie.
Sorry, I had my back to you there.
I didn't recognise you because you're normally next to me and now you're down there.
I was trying to sneak in slyly.
You did, you mastered it. Start with football.
England, Serbia last night. Terrible weather at Wembley. And, you know, some of the commentators were saying, you know, it wasn't actually quite as slick as the last time they played Serbia when they won 5-0. But still, job done, 2-0. Clean sheet, one more qualifier to come this weekend against Albania in Albania. And what is interesting is, you know, who does he pick at number 10? Who does Thomas Tuchel pick? He's got so many choices. He's gone with Morgan Rogers and stuck with him and been very faithful to him because he's done well, you know, in the team kind of scenario in that position. But you've got Jude Bellingham, superstar, Real Madrid, brought him on 65 minutes.
Champing at the bit.
Chomping at the bit, thinking, you know, this is mine. I want this place back. Phil Foden, you know, he came on. He was fizzing as well. And Eberechi Eze, Arsenal player, also came on 65 minutes and actually scored the second goal. Bukayo Saka got the first goal. Eze got the second goal. 2 goals made in Arsenal. It will be interesting, you know, come the summer, who gets that position. But it's a nice conundrum to have, right?
He's made it really clear as well, hasn't he, that he's not going to fall into the trap of previous England managers of trying to shoehorn players in. Like Lampard and Gerrard playing together, Scholes, you know, you couldn't get them all in the same team, but they tried and it didn't work. It worked terribly.
Yeah,
right?
he's already said that, you know. Well, Kane's up the front, but, you know, they're not all going to play. They, you know, they just can't.
One playing behind them. And it will be interesting which one he picks. As you say, Jude Bellingham sees himself as the superstar. I think that's his position. I think
he got a great cheer when he came on as well. You know, people were really kind of like, yeah, get him on. And
let's not forget about Morgan Gibbs-White from Forest as well.
Yes, OK, let's not forget.
Always Forest.
No, always Forest.
Give it a shout.
So this week I've been talking to a couple of boxers, pretty famous names, Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. I mean, I was around when their dads were fighting and I did those interviews and they were scary. The sons are just very nice and polite.
Charming young
public school boys who've had a very, you know, nice life. And
very interesting.
What was quite fun about talking to Conor Benn, who's got a good sense of humour, and I said, well, you know, have you had to learn how to be street? And he was like, yeah, I'm kind of a posh boy. But the good thing is, if you've got a privileged start in life, you can still chase your dreams.
You can achieve anything.
It doesn't matter where you come from. You can still chase your dreams.
I'm not sure if that message is going to take
That message
off.
doesn't really work. But let's have a listen to Conor Benn, because I thought it was quite funny talking about being a Nepo baby.
For me, I don't live in a world where I've got to prove anything to nobody but myself. For me, it was just me reconfirming what I already knew. Which is the two silver spoon Nepo kids fighting their hearts and their lives out, you know, because when you look at me and Chris, people look at us and go, oh, they've had it easy. Oh, Nepo kids, oh, silver spoon, oh. And yet I think it shows you, no matter what sphere you come from, what your background is, you can do anything you want to do in life, you can achieve anything you want to achieve. All that matters is what's inside you, and that's ambition, that's family pride, that's DNA, that's strength and resilience and courage.
I mean, he talks a good game, of course. He's a boxer. Lost the first fight. You would have thought, luckily, it was a good fight.
I mean, it was a fantastic fight. I mean, you know, contender for Fight of the Year. And actually, we're chatting...
so much beef around it. So much drama. Was Chris Eubank going to turn up?
Would Chris Eubank can't, because he was really against it. He said fighters need saving from themselves. My son shouldn't be boiling down to 160 pounds. It's not his weight. It's dangerous. I know. Why doesn't anyone listen to me? But then there was a big U-turn at the end, and then of course he made that amazing entrance. Simply the Best was his music. He came on with his son to that music. There was great drama, and they were both dads, Nigel and Chris Senior, were there yesterday at the final press conference, and they did their face-off, 35 years later, the face-off doesn't quite have the same impact. And it definitely doesn't have the same impact when you then hug your former opponent. I mean,
Well, I'm glad to see that they're friends now. They've been through a lot together. Those fights in the 90s were epic.
They're laughing. Oh,
they can't not laugh, can they?
And there's a great...
and then there's an really awkward hug.
There's a great film, Four Kings, that features them two, as well as Lennox and Frank Bruno as well, which I'm sure you have seen, that sort of reveals the rivalry between these two men. It's an amazing time for British boxing.
It was an amazing time for British boxing, but the big chat yesterday, apart from this, was Anthony Joshua. What's he going to do next? And then the talk that his next fight might be in December, and it might be against the YouTuber Jake Paul, which is another fantasy fight, isn't it? Why would you take it? Well, £70 million, that's why you would take it. But is it the sort of thing that he wants to be doing? Would it tarnish his legacy? Is it dangerous for Jake Paul to be going in with a proper, former two-time world champion?
Heavyweight world champion.
Heavyweight world champion, when that's not you. Lots of discussion about that, and it will be interesting. Talks are happening. It's not.
What's your sense? Is he going to take the fight? Is he going to?
Would you take it for 70 million?
70 million, that's massively not just your life, but everyone around you, life-changing money.
But a punch from Anthony Joshua could have an impact, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, he was just going to do a low-key fight, come back in, and then maybe fight Tyson Fury.
But
they could get that deal done.
He wants to get back in the ring and prove himself as the fighter that he thinks...
Well, that's not it, is it? That's not proving yourself. That's just going... That's a money grab. But boxing has always been a money grab, as we will see with you back then. On Saturday night.
And more of your interview tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see the rest of that interview tomorrow. And some of it is really interesting, how it all panned out after the last fight. They were both in hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, dangerous sport. All right, Jackie, thank you for now.
See you later.
See you soon. All right, let's take you to...
China.
I think the touchdown in China, yeah?
I think it's in Mongolia, I think.
Thank you.
Is that right?
Some Chinese astronauts returned to Earth this morning. Let's play the pictures. 3 astronauts who went up to the Chinese space station have returned after the capsule that they were in was damaged by space debris. You can see here one of the astronauts being carried away. Here's a factoid for you. I believe that Chinese astronauts are actually called taikonauts.
I think you're right.
Americans, astronauts, Russians, cosmonauts, Chinese astronauts, taikonauts. There you go.
So interesting the way they're carried away like that. I guess it's getting used to gravity back on Earth.
Absolutely.
Apparently they were in pretty good spirits, and they took their time, as you can see, to wave to everybody who was there to see that capsule touch down.
Well, glad it's touched down safely and those 3 are back safe and sound, and the space exploration for China, of course, continues.
Indeed.
All right. Now, of course, the government are coming under pressure in some parts to try and get involved in Donald Trump's threatened legal action against the BBC. Speaking to Lisa Nandy earlier, she said that this British government have not spoken to Donald Trump's administration at this stage as we await Donald Trump's moves and whether or not he'll pursue his defamation suit, having received an apology from the BBC. Let's speak to Anna Sabine, who's the spokesperson for the Lib Dems on culture, media and sport. Anna Sabine, thanks so much for being with us. As I said, Lisa Nandy says that the government haven't spoken to the US administration yet about this. She said it's a responsibility of the BBC at this stage.
Well, Prime Minister in Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday said that he stood ready to support the BBC and now's the time to do it. Ed Davey and I from the Lib Dems have written to the Prime Minister saying, you're saying you want to support the BBC, you need to pick up the phone to Donald Trump and get him to drop this ridiculous lawsuit, which would cost BBC licence payers, British licence payers, $1 billion. We're about to have a budget in a few weeks. We're talking a lot about the cost of living crisis. Is the Prime Minister going to sit by and watch as Donald Trump costs British people $1 billion? I would hope not, and I would hope that's something worth calling out.
Yeah, £760 million is how it would convert to in our money. Is there a danger here, Anna Sabine, of getting ahead of the sequencing of this? The BBC perhaps are thinking they may be kicking themselves for getting ahead of their apology, Deborah Turness and Sid Davey having to resign prior to Donald Trump making his further demands. Do we need to see what happens next before that call comes in from the government?
So I don't think it's about sequencing, although I agree the sequencing has been poor, and that's one of the lessons the BBC is going to learn. What the Lib Dems would like to see is the government robustly defending our national broadcaster in the face of an attack from a supposed ally, an ally in Trump who has been trying to bring down his own national broadcaster. The BBC is not just a huge cultural institution in the UK, it's a huge source of soft power for us across the world, including with things like the World Service, and it needs robust defence. And I think that regardless of the timing, the Prime Minister needs to hop on the call and show that he's active in his defence of the BBC, not just that he's offering it warm words.
I mean, the Prime Minister, as you say, has said it earlier in the week. Lisa Nandy said it again to me this morning. And I guess they, like you, like everyone else, is now waiting to see Donald Trump's Truth Social to see whether he accepts the apology, the retraction, and that personal letter that we understand was sent by Samir Shah.
But you know, if you had a friend that was being beaten up, you wouldn't just stand next to them and go, "Oh, I stand ready to support you." You know, you get stuck in, and I want to see the government getting stuck in on this. They're sounding very supportive, but they're not doing what would actually be helpful, which is to speak to Donald Trump about it. We're being bullied here by Trump again on another issue, and it's not acceptable.
Of course, this is about the relationship with the Americans, but the BBC do have form in paying foreign leaders damages. As you may well know, Petro Poroshenko, former president of Ukraine, was paid damages for a report back in 2019. Amazingly, how the universe works, that was related to Donald Trump as well. But the BBC paid out those damages, not clear how much was paid. But the BBC have done this before. This is something that a corporation of that size has to do.
There's two things there, aren't there? One is around whether the damages are warranted in this case. And as we can see, lots of media experts on the news and the BBC have taken their own media advice, suggest that there hasn't really been any defamation here in the terms in which required. So I'm not sure that a payment is required here. The second thing is that the scale of payment that Donald Trump is calling for is ludicrous. It's designed to showboat. It's designed to bring down the BBC if it was ever implemented. And the government has got to defend that. And that's what the Lib Dems are calling for.
Yeah. So, look, we're all waiting for 10 p.m. tonight. But as you'll know, Anna Sabine, Donald Trump has managed to get media organisations in the United States to pay damages to him. I think it was $12 million from CBS and some $13-14 million from ABC as well. He's also obviously suing the New York Times at the moment, as well as the Wall Street Journal. The BBC will be very, very cognizant of the fact that he is a litigious man, as Samir Shah has said. Can an argument be made to try and assuage by paying the damages rather than taking it all the way fully through?
I think that's so wrong, and I think that's kowtowing. If there was a good legal argument, if someone was saying, well, actually, the BBC's done X, Y, Z things that would stack up in court, that might be fair enough. But I haven't yet seen a media expert on the news say that this is the case. Given that there seems to be no case to answer, the BBC has apologised twice. Clearly, they made huge mistakes. We agree with that. This stuff needs looking at, and it needs to not happen again. No one's doubting that. But in legal terms, there is no case, and I think this is bigger than the BBC. This is about protecting a huge national institution, a British national institution that belongs to the British people, and the Lib Dems would like to see the government being a bit more active in their defence.
All right, Anna Sabine from the Lib Dems, the spokesperson for culture, media and sport, thank you for that. And on that question, I guess we'll put that to our next couple of guests, Anna, won't we? We're joined by Roger Bolton and Charlie Rowley to debate what the BBC should do next in the event that Donald Trump does continue to pursue a defamation suit.
Yeah, and really interesting to get their views on whether they feel the BBC has done the right thing so far. So stay tuned.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna.
We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us.
I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back to Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. Now, the BBC says it's apologised to President Trump for the way his speech on January 6th was edited in a panorama, but they are arguing there's no basis for his defamation claim and are at this point refusing to pay compensation.
Yeah, really interesting issue this. So one we want to discuss with two guests this morning. I'm joined now by former Radio 4 feedback presenter Roger Bolton, who's in Birkenhead for us this morning. And here in the studio is Charlie Rowley, who was a former special advisor to Michael Gove. So very good morning to both of you. Roger Bolton, can I put the first question to you? I'm really curious to get your reaction to the BBC's response so far. They have apologised for the mistakes made in that panorama programme, and they've also retracted it so that it's not going to be available on any platforms from now on. But they say they won't be paying any kind of compensation to President Trump. Do you think they've made the right call?
Yeah, of course it's the right call, and I don't think the government should interfere either. President Trump floods the zone with a whole range of stories. I don't think he's going to pursue this one much further. I mean, he's attempting to rewrite history, of course. That's what interests him, apart from the money involved. There's no way I think he would win a law case in this instance. So the BBC's proper tactic, and perhaps the government's, is to play it very low-key. They've apologised, and then leave it up to him. And if he does say he's going to sue, then this process will take a year, 18 months, whatever, by which time he'll be involved with something else. So don't do anything more than that. Oh, by the way, don't repeat the mistake again.
Oh, yeah, that could do with not doing that, couldn't they, Roger? Charlie, what's your sense of this? I mean, on the principle of this, should the BBC, if Donald Trump decides to take this further and take this to court, should the BBC be paying licence payer fees?
Well, I don't think if it goes all that far that the licence fee will cover it. We're not talking about a small claims court process. We're talking about an international government, the United States, suing the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. So I don't think the licence fee will cover it. I agree with Roger, to be fair. I think the BBC should apologise, as it has done. I think it needs to be very careful with its language and go as far as it can to apologise, which I don't think it has done. I think, in some of the conversations I've heard, particularly with the splicing of the panorama, it's still referred to as just a mistake.
There has been a personal letter now sent from the chair, Shamir Shah, hasn't there, personally to Donald Trump. Is that not enough of an apology for you?
I think it could have gone further. I mean, I don't think I would have allowed, as a former special advisor, a government minister just to pop on television and say, I think we've made a mistake, and just sort of kind of sweep it under the carpet. I would have gone a lot further to say this was a huge error of judgment. It fell well below the editorial standards that you'd expect of the BBC. A mistake is me like putting one sugar in your tea instead of two. You can sort of apologise, or no sugar at all. You apologise for it, it's slightly inconvenient, and you move on. But this is this is another issue that the BBC has had to face with its editorial standards that has fallen below what people expect on the back of Glastonbury, on the back of the inconsistency of how you treat presenters, whether it's Martin Croxall or Gary Lineker, for example. There seems to be a discrepancy of how they were treated. So lots of issues are there for the BBC to sort out, which is why I think when you're dealing with an international player as big as Donald Trump, you do need to be a bit more humble about the mistakes that have been made, be categorical in your apology, and hope that that can be the end of it.
So look, $1 billion will be £760 million. Their income from the licence fee at the year ending March 25 was $3.8 billion. So, I mean, it would cover it. It'd be a significant hit, but it would cover it. You don't see any problem with taxpayer money going towards Trump if he takes it that far?
Well, that money would be the starting point that goes to Donald Trump, I think. That wouldn't cover the ongoing, as Roger said, the longevity of what the case could be. And plus, then the BBC, the licence fee wouldn't be able to cover all the programming that it does, the brilliant programme that it does. Because I have been a defender of the BBC, I've been a supporter of it, but it has made huge mistakes in the past. It needs to, on this occasion, be very, very open about that, be very self-critical, and apologise in no uncertain terms to Donald Trump in the hope that this can go away so no taxpayer or licence fee payer gets copped for any kind of bill.
Let's pick up some of those points with Roger Bolton, who's listening in there. So, Roger, I mean, the BBC does look pretty confident that it feels that it has a strong case legally. It doesn't feel that they have defamed Donald Trump. However, we don't know what the president's reaction will be. If he does push ahead with suing the BBC, what's your feeling about this use of licence payers' money? Because they did have to cough up. It would come from that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, it won't come to that. I mean, you can assess it in theory and in principle, and it's licence fee pay money. It's not taxpayers, by the way. It is different, and there is a distinction that matters there. No, look, it'll not come to that. It'll go into the long term. Should the BBC make any sort of payment ahead of any court case? No. Look, what Donald Trump is about rewriting history. The House of Representatives and the Senate all voted that he was guilty of what they called a self-coup. Not enough to impeach him because you need two-thirds majority in the Senate. But they agreed that was the case. The leader of at that time, the Republicans, said that he was morally responsible for what happened. So let's not pretend. He tried to ensure that at an American election, which is free and fair, the results were turned over. He called it the big steal. He's still aiming to do that. He's just pardoned 1,000 people, rioters, who were involved in that. He's just pardoned a significant number of people who claimed that the polls were rigged. There's no evidence of that, and no court has ever demonstrated that. So what he's about now is continuing to rewrite history. Well, you can't go along with that, and you can't be bullied. So you say, we got it wrong, it's bad. And I think they have said that in pretty clear terms. You make sure it doesn't happen again, and you continue. Now, what he might do is take some vindictive action on BBC's operations in America. And he might start banning, for example, correspondence from the White House, or he could go further. There are things he could do. Well, you've just got to last it out. He will be gone in 3 years' time. The BBC, please God, won't, and impartial broadcasting won't. So you've got to not, go out of your way to offend a person like that, but you certainly don't kowtow to them. And you're very clear. You stick to what your job is to be impartial. And you don't allow him to get away with rewriting history, which is what he's about.
Roger, thank you for that. Charlie, we've only got about 45 seconds left. So, look, that point there, in and of itself is a reason to defend this case. Donald Trump is trying to rewrite what happened on January the 6th. He may not have said those things at exactly the same time, but after that speech, his supporters did march on the Capitol, did produce death threats towards Congress people, and there was a riot. Police officers were hurt and killed.
You're right, but the reporting of that on its own should have been enough. So there was no need to splice the clip that they did. And Roger's absolutely right. You should apologise and hope that it never happens again. But there's a story today in which Newsnight had spliced another speech together. So lots of still questions for the BBC, but let's hope the apology is enough to prevent whether it's the licence fee payer or indeed taxpayers, if it comes to that, ever having to pay a legal bill.
We'll find out who he wants to do it 10 p.m. tonight. Set your watches.
Charlie Rowley and Roger Bolton, thanks very much indeed. We'll be picking up on this on the rest of the day, but that's it from us.
See you tomorrow.